The very first thing I did after being reborn back into the 1980s was to find a forger in town to make me a fake university acceptance letter. Then, I went to the post office and secretly swapped it for my real one, all because in my past life, my boyfriend and Gu Zhozhou both got into university, while I was the only one who failed the entrance exams. My boyfriend even broke up with me on the spot and went off to university with Gu Zhozhou. I was left behind in the countryside to farm the land, where I was bullied by the villagers. It wasn't until later, when Gu Zhozhou returned with a few classmates and was addressed as Chenran by them, that I realized she had changed her name and assumed my identity to enroll in school. I went to confront Gu Zhozhou, but she teamed up with her boyfriend Shen Nanqing and had me killed. When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the day my acceptance letter arrived. I quietly went to town to get a fake acceptance letter, and when the mailman wasn't looking, I switched it out. Only then did they return to the village. When I got back to the village, I saw Shen Nanqing and Gu Zhozhou waiting at the entrance. Seeing me arrive, Shen Nanqing spoke up. "Chenran, the mail carrier will be here soon. You should head home first. If there's an admission letter, I'll bring it to you later." In my past life, I believed Shen Nanqing's words and went home to wait, but I never expected that Shen Nanqing would tell me I didn't get in. Ironically, Gu Zhozhou, who had always struggled academically, ended up getting into college. Back then, I trusted Shen Nanqing completely, never imagining that in the end, she had already made a deal with Gu Zhozhou on his deathbed. Shen Nanqing even told me that Gu Zhozhou had given him 1,000 yuan to hand over my university admission letter to her years ago. In order to attend university, Shen Nanqing took the initiative to propose to my family, offering to marry into our household. He even accepted a full 500 yuan as a bride price from my family. It was with that 500 yuan that he managed to survive and eventually pass the university entrance exams. And now, for Gu Zhozhou's sake, he chose to betray me. I nodded with a smile and then went straight home. Looking at the admission letter in my hand, I smiled. Gu Zhozhou had no idea I'd already gotten my hands on it long ago. After all, Gu Zhozhou's father was the village chief. If I crossed their family now, my life in the village would be miserable. I had to bide my time. I'd deal with her and Shen Nanqing once we got to university. Right after I hid the admission letter away, Shen Nanqing and Gu Zhozhou showed up at my house. "Chenran, you didn't get into university." When Shen Nanqing said those words, I saw the tension in his eyes. In my previous life, when I heard the news, I simply refused to believe it, which is why I didn't notice the tension between him and Gu Zhozhou. Now I finally realized they had been scheming against me all along. Since I didn't get in, I guess I'll go out and find a job. I looked at Shen Nanqing and spoke up. Hearing my words, Shen Nanqing and Gu Zhozhou exchanged a glance, their expressions visibly relaxed. "Chenran, I found you a job in the village. You should just stay here." From the side, Gu Zhozhou spoke up. I knew it was because she was afraid that once I left, I'd discover she had stolen my identity. That's why she wanted to keep me trapped in the village. "No, it's fine, I'm going out." My words caused the expressions of Shen Nanqing and Gu Zhozhou to change. Shen Nanqing urged me anxiously, "Chenran, wouldn't it be better for you to work in the village? Everyone here would look out for you." "No need, Shen Nanqing. I'm going to find work in the city." I looked at Shen Nanqing and spoke too. In the end, Shen Nanqing and Gu Zhozhou couldn't persuade me and had no choice but to leave. After I got home, I immediately started packing my things. I knew I had to leave the village, otherwise, they'd be watching me, and I'd never make it back to school. I packed my luggage, planning to go to town the next day to buy a bus ticket and head out to find work. When the new term started, I'd go straight to school, but that very night, Shen Nanqing and Gu Zhozhou still managed to find me. "Chenran, I've come to call off our engagement." Shen Nanqing looked at me and spoke. I looked back at Shen Nanqing and smiled. In my past life, he came to break off the engagement at this exact time, too, because Gu Zhozhou gave him 1,000 yuan. He took 500 and gave it to me, saying he wanted to return the dowry my family had given him. At that moment, I was completely overwhelmed and didn't think twice. I just took the money and handed back the marriage contract Shen Nanqing had signed. But now, I simply can't do that. "Shen Nanqing, you can call off the engagement, but remember, the marriage contract clearly states that if you break it off, you owe my family an extra $500. I looked at Shen Nanqing and spoke. Hearing my words, Shen Nanqing was immediately stunned. He knew perfectly well that years ago, to win my family's trust, he hadn't hesitated for a moment before signing the matrilocal marriage agreement. He knew I was fond of him, so he believed that if he proposed to break off the engagement now, I would surely agree, and might not even demand much compensation from him. I just got $1,000 from Gu Zhozhou, and now he wants to give it all to me. There's no way he's willing to part with it. After all, school is going to cost a pretty penny, but if he doesn't hand it over, he won't get my marriage certificate. Chenran, how could you do this? Do you really think you're good enough for Shen Nanqing? Gu Zhozhou, standing nearby, pointed directly at me and shouted loudly, but I looked at Gu Zhozhou, shook my head, and said, whether I'm good enough for Shen Nanqing or not, if he chooses to break up with me now, he's going to have to pay up. Of course, you're free to refuse, but I'll take this agreement and sue Shen Nanqing. In that case, he won't be able to go to college either. The moment I finished speaking, Shen Nanqing's expression instantly changed. He had to go to university, so he hastily handed me the 1,000 yuan he'd gotten from Gu Zhozhou. Looking at the money in my hand, I smiled and said, Shen Nanqing, here is our marriage certificate. Take good care of it. After I handed the marriage certificate to Shen Nanqing, I watched them leave. Then, I picked up my bag and hurried away. I knew that once I took the 1,000 yuan from Shen Nanqing, word would spread across the village in no time. My father had passed away a year ago, and with no sons in our family, we'd be considered a cut-off lineage in this day and age, something that would make us a target for ridicule and exploitation in the countryside. So, I still need to leave as soon as possible. I slipped away under the cover of night, and after leaving the village, I went straight to town and checked into a guest house. It was at that moment that I finally felt at ease. 3. After arriving in the provincial capital, I found a job near the school to wait for the semester to start. Soon enough, the first day of school arrived. That day, I headed to the campus with my letter of admission in hand. The moment I stepped inside, I saw Gu Zhozhou, Shen Nanqing, and Zhozhou's mother. The three of them looked at me in complete astonishment. I could even see Gu Zhozhou's panic. Shen Nanqing strode right up to me, looked me in the eye, and demanded loudly, Chenran, what are you doing here? I'm here to study. I looked at Shen Nanqing before me and spoke up, Chenran, what are you talking about? Hearing my words, Shen Nanqing's face clearly showed panic as he urgently said, you didn't even get into university, what are you doing here trying to study? At that moment, I caught sight of Shen Nanqing's awkward act and couldn't help but smile. Chenran, you didn't get into college, what are you doing here? Go home, now. Behind Shen Nanqing, Gu Zhozhou's mother hurriedly looked at me and said, her eyes filled with anxiety as she said, Chenran, have you run out of money after working outside these past few months? It's okay, I'll give you $100, just leave quickly. I looked at the family of several in front of me, smiled without speaking, and said, I'm just here to have a look. As soon as I finished speaking, I headed straight for the school. Seeing me about to enter the school, Shen Nanqing's face changed. He immediately tried to grab me, but I shook him off right outside the school gates. I wasn't afraid of this family in the slightest. After all, if things got physical, I could just call for help. I looked at Gu Changming standing before me, my face cold. Gu Changming, I'm going to the university, what are you stopping me for? Gu Changming's face was full of urgency as he looked at me. Chenran, stop this nonsense, you didn't get into university at all, what are you doing here? Go home, right now. As he spoke, there was a clear warning in his eyes. Shen Nanqing, what gives you the right to control me? Where I go is none of your business. I shot back. Hearing this, Shen Nanqing was taken aback for a moment, then looked at me and said, I'm your fiancé, shouldn't I be concerned about you? Shen Nanqing, you seem to have forgotten. You took the betrothal contract, there's been nothing between us for a long time. My words instantly changed Shen Nanqing's expression. In that moment, he grabbed me and said loudly, Chenran, no matter what your reason is, you shouldn't be here. I know it's because he took $1,000 from the Gu family that he's trying so desperately to stop me. Moreover, if people find out that he helped Gu Zhozhou deceive me, he'll definitely face punishment. That's why Shen Nanqing is even more anxious than Gu Zhozhou right now. I looked at Shen Nanqing, smiled, and then pushed him aside. I'm here for my own reasons, nothing to do with you. I'm leaving. As I said this, I turned and walked towards the school. Seeing me still trying to enter, Gu Zhozhou, who was behind me, looked at me coldly and said, Chenran, even if you get in, it's pointless, you don't have an admission letter, you can't enroll. Hearing this, I glanced back at Gu Zhozhou. She still had no idea what kind of trouble she was in for Shen Nanqing still tried to stop me. I looked at her and said coldly, if you keep blocking me, I'll call the police. My words brought Shen Nanqing's every movement to an abrupt halt. He knew full well that if he tried to stop me, it would only make things worse. He's had an exceptionally tough month. If it weren't for the villagers lending him some money, believing he'd get into university and repay them, he wouldn't have survived. After all these years, Shen Nanqing has relied on my family to study in peace. Now that I've stopped supporting him, the only people he can turn to are the Gu Zhozhou family. Seeing that I was still heading for the school, Shen Nanqing grabbed my arm and said, "Chenran, you can't go in there." I looked at Shen Nanqing and said, "Shen Nanqing, if you keep blocking me, I'm really going to call the police." My words made Shen Nanqing's face turn even more grim, especially at the entrance, with our whole group shoving and pulling outside. Quite a few students and teachers had already taken notice. The security guard even started walking towards us. "What's going on here?" The security guard walked right up to our group and asked, "I'm here to attend school, and they're blocking me from entering." As soon as I finished speaking, all the guards immediately turned their gaze towards Shen Nanqing and Gu Zhozhou and her mother. The expressions on all three of their faces changed. "Mrs. Gu spoke up directly, you've been deceived by her. She failed the exams and didn't get into university at all, that's why we're stopping her." "Exactly, she can't even produce an admission letter." From the side, Gu Zhozhou stated with certainty, "Gu Zhozhou has my admission letter, which is exactly why she's acting so calm, but what she doesn't know is that I already took my real letter back and made a fake one. The one she's holding is the counterfeit." A few security guards were watching me. I quickly produced my own admission letter and declared, "This is my admission letter." The moment I finished speaking, the expressions on Gu Zhozhou and Shen Nanqing's faces shifted, especially Gu Zhozhou, who cried out urgently, "That's impossible." Her eyes were fixed on the acceptance letter in my hand, and at that moment, Gu Zhozhou stared even more intently at Shen Nanqing. Even Shen Nanqing was staring at me in a daze. "The admission letter in her hand is a forgery." As she spoke, Shen Nanqing lunged at me, trying to snatch the acceptance letter right out of my hands. I immediately ducked behind the security guard and shouted, "They're trying to steal my admission letter." Hearing that, several guards immediately restrained Shen Nanqing. "That acceptance letter in her hand is fake. Don't let her fool you," Shen Nanqing shouted excitedly. The commotion at the entrance was too loud, and by now, it had already drawn the attention of quite a few people. Even the school teachers came. "Teachers, here's my admission letter. Please take a look and see if it's fake." I handed the acceptance letter to the school official and said aloud. A quick glance was all it took for everyone to confirm the acceptance letter was genuine. "They snatched my admission letter and won't let me attend school. I hope the school can help me file a police report." I looked at Shen Nanqing and the others and spoke up. 5. Upon hearing this, the teachers immediately turned their gaze towards Shen Nanqing and the group. One of them promptly went to make a phone call. "Teachers, don't be fooled by her. My admission letter is the real one," Gu Zhozhou exclaimed excitedly as she handed over the admission letter. I watched the scene and smiled. Gu Zhozhou was truly foolish. She had no idea that using a forged document to attend university was completely useless and could even lead to a prison sentence. When she handed the admission letter to the teachers, they all stared at it, stunned. "Which one of you is Chenran?" They looked at the name on the admission letter with surprise, but I just smiled, pulled out my household registration booklet, and handed it to the teacher, saying, "I am Chenran, I'm the one," Gu Zhozhou shouted excitedly, glaring at me with a fierce look. "Teacher, my name is Chenran." The teachers looked at the admission letter before them and realized something was seriously wrong. We were taken to the principal's office, and soon after, the police and officials from the Education Bureau arrived. The situation had escalated. Someone had forged documents to steal a university spot, and the Education Bureau was bound to get involved. I sat calmly in the office, facing Shen Nanqing and Gu Zhozhou, mother and daughter. All three of them stared at me, especially Shen Nanqing, who fixed me with a furious glare. I didn't say a word, just stared back at the three of them with a cold expression. Shen Nanqing glared at me and demanded, "Chenran, what exactly are you trying to do?" "I just want my student status back." I looked at Shen Nanqing and said with a cold laugh. He fell silent upon hearing my words. "Chenran, if you admit now that the admission letter is fake, our family is willing to give you 1,000 yuan, otherwise, you know very well what the consequences will be. My husband is the village chief." She looked at me and said coldly, "For years, Mrs. Gu has been throwing her weight around the village, all because her husband is the village chief, but she has no idea that outside this village, that so-called title of chief is utterly worthless, and now, Mrs. Gu is actually trying to threaten me with that village chief position." I smiled. She had no idea just how big this mess had become. Because of this, her husband wouldn't just lose his position as village chief, the whole family was likely headed for jail. Seeing that I remained silent, Aunt Gu's expression grew even uglier. She glared at me with pure malice, yet I felt oddly at ease. "Chenran, where did you get that admission letter?" Gu Zhozhou suddenly spoke up, looking at me as she asked. When she asked this, she still hadn't given up hope. Indiana her mind, as long as Shen Nanqing hadn't handed the admission letter to me, then mine must be fake. I looked at Gu Zhuzhou and shook my head. When someone is this foolish, they're beyond saving. Doesn't she realize that even if I'm using a fake ID, my real name is Chen Ran? That student record was originally mine. She's the one pretending to be me, and besides, mine is the real one. Only Shen Nanqing, at that moment, had fear written all over his face, trying to say something to me, but I didn't even bother to pay him any attention. Just as Shen Nanqing was about to say something to me, the office door burst open and a crowd flooded in. I glanced at a few executives in dress jackets and smiled. I know this has already blown up into a big deal. We're only in the 80s now. If this happened later, it would have blown up all over the internet. After taking their seats, the leaders looked at us and asked, "Which one of you is Chen Ran?" As his words trailed off, Gu Zhuzhou shouted excitedly, I'm Chen Ran," she said, looking at me smugly. "Officials, have you figured it out yet? This person is the imposter. I told you all along, she's the imposter, I'm the real one." I didn't say a word. Instead, I handed over my household registration book and looked at the officials, saying, "I'm Chen Ran. Also, I'm filing a real name report. The village chief from our village stole my college admission to let his daughter go to university. He switched her name with mine, and they even held on to my acceptance letter without permission." I spoke up. My words instantly drained the color from the leaders' faces, but before the words had even left my mouth, that brainless Gu Zhuzhou burst out laughing. "Chen Ran," she crowed, "you just admitted my father withheld your admission letter. That means the one you're holding must be a fake. Arrest her, now." Stunned by Gu Zhuzhou's hysterical outburst, the officials and school faculty were frozen in place. They didn't even need to ask anything else. It would be a genuine miracle if someone like that ever got into university. Besides, Gu Zhuzhou's actions amount to an indirect admission that she actually held on to my acceptance letter. So, the expressions on the faces of the leaders were extremely grim at that moment. They looked at me and said, "Classmate Chen Ran, if that's the case, then, why is your admission letter genuine?" I had no choice but to tell him how I'd hired someone to forge documents, swapped my acceptance letter, and quietly left the village. I know these things don't affect me at all. In the eyes of several officials, the village head's family became even more troublesome. After all, if I hadn't done this, I would have lost my student status. Shen Nanqing's face paled dramatically. He looked at me, words clearly on the tip of his tongue, but after a quick glance at the assembled leadership, he didn't dare utter a sound. Meanwhile, Gu Zhuzhou and her mother were still making a big fuss over there. "Chen Ran, how could you be so despicable? You're a thief. What are you waiting for? Arrest him now. My husband is the village chief." I listened to Mrs. Gu's words and was left speechless. For half her life, Madame Gu had lorded it over the village, completely unaware that here, no one, no matter who they were, would ever take a village head seriously. The group completely ignored Mrs. Gu and instead turned to me, saying, "Chen Ran, we understand what you've been through, but we need time to get to the bottom of this. Don't worry, as long as your identity checks out, you'll be admitted to the university. However, for the time being, you cannot enroll yet." After saying this, the officials turned their gaze towards Gu Zhuzhou and her mother. They added, "And that goes for you too as well." I watched Shen Nanqing cowering in the corner, trembling and unable to speak. When he saw me looking at him, he met my gaze with an even more pleading expression. He was well aware that, in this matter, he was also an accomplice. I pointed at Shen Nanqing and said, "Guys, it was him who took my acceptance letter, handed it over to the village chief, and even accepted 1,000 yuan from the chief's family." No sooner had I finished speaking than Shen Nanqing's face changed. In the end, Shen Nanqing was also taken into custody. That night, several of us were put up in the school dorms. According to those officials, they needed to look into the matter thoroughly. I can only enroll once the investigation is complete. However, those officials knew perfectly well that I was the real victim. After all, compared to me, Gu Zhuzhou didn't look anything like a university student. The mother and daughter were confined to the dormitory, yet Mrs. Gu persisted, making a huge scene and shouting, "We came here to study, you won't let my daughter enroll, and now you're holding us here. Do you have any idea who my husband is? He's the village chief. I live right next door." Could even hear Mrs. Gu's voice. I shook my head. A shrew like that was utterly unreasonable. Mrs. Gu made a huge scene, with Gu Zhuzhou chiming in to back her up. In the end, there was no other choice. The police had to take them both away. I stayed in the dorm for 2 days. During that time, Shen Nanqing tried countless times to find me, but each time someone stopped her. I know, he was genuinely scared, but this whole mess was Shen Nanqing's own doing. He chose Gu Zhuzhou for the money, and now he must pay the price. Early on the third morning, I saw school officials standing at the entrance. They told me it's all Been figured out honestly, it's on Gu Zhozhou's family too, they never really cared about me. All they did was change his name, they didn't do anything else. As soon as the Education Bureau officials arrived in our town, they uncovered the truth right away. After all, Gu Zhozhou only changed his name after receiving the admission letter. What's more, all the teachers at our school know who I am with testimony from teachers and classmates, and the fact that Gu Zhozhou's name change occurred at an unusual time. They took the village chief into custody overnight. The village chief is now at the police station. Our entire group was taken to the police station, where I saw the village chief and his family. Gu Zhozhou and her mother were there too. They'd been arrested just 2 days after causing a disturbance, and Shen Nanqing was brought in as well. When they were led inside, they saw me too. I looked at the people before me. Their eyes were filled with hatred as they stared back. I paid them no mind. I knew what awaited them was a prison sentence. The matter has been fully investigated. The village chief's family took your student status, and Shen Nanqing intercepted your admission letter. The officer looked at me and said, "They'll get exactly what they deserve." I am grateful. Before leaving, Shen Nanqing suddenly turned around and said to me, "Chen Ran, if you don't report me and write a letter of forgiveness, I can still be with you." I looked at Shen Nanqing and smiled faintly. "Nanqing, do you think there's still a chance for us?" "Chen Ran, I agree to become your son-in-law, but this time, I won't accept any bride price." He looked at me and said it with complete shamelessness. "Besides, I'm a college student. Once I graduate, our life will definitely get better." "Chen Ran, I know you still have feelings for me. I'll put it in writing. I promise to love you for a lifetime." I looked at the man before me and shook my head. What would I even do with someone like him? "Shen Nanqing, did you really think my letter of understanding would be enough?" I shook my head. He had no idea that even if I wrote a letter of forgiveness, it would be useless now that everything had been uncovered. The Shen Nanqing of today is utterly undeserving of my forgiveness. How could I possibly write a letter of forgiveness for him? I turned and walked away without a second glance, leaving behind the sound of Shen Nanqing desperately calling my name. I got into university just as I'd hoped. In my past life, this was what I wanted most. I worked especially hard at school because I knew how difficult it was for me to get this chance to study. A few days later, the police came to the school and told me they had all been sentenced. Shen Nanqing was directly expelled from the university and sentenced to 2 years for obstructing my student registration and for his deplorable character. The same fate awaited Gu Zhozhou and her mother. A 2-year prison sentence was a certainty. As for the village chief, his situation was far more serious. It was only through their investigation that the police discovered the village chief had not only stolen my student registration, but had also embezzled collective funds and seized land belonging to the villagers. Furthermore, for years, he had abused his position as village chief to oppress the villagers. Once the villagers realized the village chief wasn't coming back, they didn't hold back. They spilled everything he'd done over the years. He was sentenced to 20 years. He'll basically spend the rest of his life behind bars. The police told me Shen Nanqing wants to see me. I went to the detention center to visit Shen Nanqing, and as soon as he saw me, he started crying. "Chen Ran, I truly know I was wrong. Can you forgive me?" He wept with an unusual intensity, his eyes fixed on me as he choked out the question. I just smiled without saying a word. I didn't even bother dealing with Shen Nanqing anymore. At that moment, Shen Nanqing spoke up directly, saying, "Chen Ran, wait for me. Once I get out of prison, I'll marry you." "Shen Nanqing, we've had nothing to do with each other for a long time. I'm only here to tell you that I will never forgive you in this lifetime. It's best if we don't see each other." Having said that, I turned around and walked away. 2 years later, while I was at school, someone told me that a person named Shen Nanqing had come looking for me. I immediately said that this person and I had a grudge, and told them not to let him in. Shen Nanqing was kicked out. I never went back to that village again. After graduation, I started working. It was right during the entrepreneurial boom, so I took the plunge and started my own company. My business has grown significantly, and my reputation in the town has spread. They've asked me to return to the village to invest. I agreed. I returned to the village with a full entourage of bodyguards, secured a plot of land on the outskirts, and invested in building a factory. The villagers were taken aback when they saw me. No one had expected that after all these years away, I would return as a successful tycoon. He also had quite a few bodyguards with him. They told me about the village head's family. It turns out that while Gu Zhozhou and her mother were in prison, the mother's foul mouth got her beaten so badly she became mentally disabled. She's still confined at home now. Because of her mother's actions, Gu Zhozhou was implicated and had her arm broken in an assault after getting out of prison. She had no choice but to marry an old widower from the village. The man was an alcoholic who would occasionally grab Gu Zhozhou and beat her up. The villagers told me that Gu Zhozhou was beaten almost every day, living in constant misery. Yet, she dared not divorce because she had no income and was entirely dependent on the old widower's money. The family blamed Shen Nanqing for the whole affair. In fact, Gu Zhozhou even went to Shen's house to demand money. Upon hearing this, the old widower followed. Shen Nanqing had no money to give as compensation, and the old widower broke one of his legs. Shen didn't even dare to report it to the police. As I listened to the villagers, I glanced into the distance. Amidst the crowd, a man with a dark, weathered face, leaning on a crutch, was looking at me with a complex mix of emotions. I knew this was Shen Nanqing. This is what he has become. What's more, he'll spend the rest of his life drowning in regret, while I will only get better and better. The end. That's the end of the first story. Don't go away. The next one is even more thrilling. That semester of senior year, Shen Yu and his girlfriend were caught by their teacher dating. To protect his girlfriend, he spread the rumor that I was the one who kissed him in the small park. He said that if Qianqian's family found out she was in a puppy love, they'd make her drop out. So he admitted to the school administrators that it was me, which got me pulled aside for a private talk and forced to give a public apology on stage. My classmates started whispering when they saw me, and nasty rumors began to spread about me around school. I never thought being accused of a simple teenage romance would land me in such a mess. My grades kept slipping, and my spot in the art competition was taken by Lin Qingqing's best friend. As I was walking home, utterly dejected, a group of thugs suddenly rushed out and dragged me into an alley. My parents, notified of what happened, were killed in a car accident on their way to the hospital. My heart turned to ash. I climbed to the top of the hospital building and jumped. When I opened my eyes again, I saw Shen Yu holding Lin Qingqing's hand, walking toward the little park. The fear from that leap from the heights hadn't even faded when a cold sweat broke out over me in an instant. Without a second thought, I rushed to the classroom, grabbed my math exam, and bolted to the teacher's office. My math teacher was a very dedicated woman who was nearing retirement and really cared about our final year as her last class. She never turned down a student's question. Unfortunately, since I was a dance major, I didn't pay much attention to my academic grades. She looked surprised at my question, yet also relieved. This is the first time I've seen you come to me with questions. I always said, even though the art entrance exam is an option, having higher scores in cultural subjects can't hurt. I took a couple of shaky breaths, finally grasping the reality that I'd been reborn. As the teacher lectured on concepts I only half understood, tears streamed down my face uncontrollably. As long as I stay here until evening study, I'll definitely avoid Shen Yu's frame-up. Seeing my tears, the veteran teacher seemed at a loss. She assumed it was the pressure of the college entrance exam that had broken me down, so she put down the test paper and comforted me beside me. Finally, just as the bell for evening study hall rang, I said goodbye to my teacher and stepped out of the office, right into Shen Yu, who was rushing frantically toward the classroom. He's in a different class from me. He's in the honors class, packed with top students, while I'm in class 5, which is full of art majors. We live in the same neighborhood, and have been playing together since elementary school. He's always been academically excellent, good-looking, and very popular with girls. My grades are average, but my family is well off. I've been studying dance since childhood and planned to take the art college entrance exam in high school. We always got along well before Shen Yu started dating, so I never thought he'd actually push me into the abyss just for Lin Qingqing. Because of his excellent grades and being recognized by teachers as a promising candidate for a top-tier university like a 985, with a real shot at Tsinghua or Peking University if he worked a bit harder, school administrators took his early romance very seriously. Shen Yu was right about one thing. If the teacher found out it was Lin Qingqing he was dating, she'd be in for a world of trouble. But the one thing he absolutely should not have done was try to pin this on me. This time, I have a solid alibi, and I'm determined to cut all ties with them. Shen Yu's class was quite a distance from mine. For him to come find me now, right after getting caught, he must be looking for a scapegoat. Spotting me, he paused mid-step and quickly strode over, reaching out as if to grab my hand. I immediately took 2 steps back, putting distance between us. I dodged him, leaving Shen Yu momentarily stunned, but he quickly regained his composure and said to me, "Nianqiao, after evening self-study ends, let's go get some snacks off campus." My treat. In my previous life, he used this excuse to invite me along, but as soon as we stepped out of the school building, we were called into the office by the academic advisor. Before I could even figure out what was going on, Shen Yu directly admitted that I was the one with him in the small park. I tried to defend myself, but he grabbed me, and since we interacted a lot normally, the teacher believed him. I ended up getting lectured by the teacher and gossiped about by classmates, and now look where it's gotten me. A surge of hatred welled up from the depths of my heart, only to be forcibly suppressed. No, I have to study. With that, I didn't even glance back at him and walked straight toward the classroom. Wait a sec. Shinyu grabbed my hand. You're an art student, why bother cramming? Just dance your way into college when the time comes. Are you insane? I thought to myself, utterly exasperated, and jerked my hand away from his. Art students need to pass the academic exams too, you know. If you want to go by yourself. Back at my seat, I opened my textbook. Math and English had always been my weak subjects, but the confidence from my family background, coupled with my plan to take the art school entrance exam, led me to only aim for a passing grade in my academic courses. Now, my experiences from my past life have made me realize the importance of those academic scores. Wouldn't it be a better choice to give myself a safety net? When evening self-study ended, I saw Lin Qingqing peering out from the doorway of Class 4 as I stood by the entrance to Class 5. Her eyes lit up when she saw me. Nian Xiao, what are you still doing here? Didn't AU say he was going off campus with you? Noticing the glances from the surrounding classmates, I frowned. This despicable pair was dead set on using me as a scapegoat. No, I haven't been in touch with him much since you got together with Shinyu. I finished with a smile. Even though we used to be close, it's best to keep some distance now. Right, Lin Qingqing hadn't expected me to expose their affair in front of so many people. Her face froze, and she looked up in a panic, scrambling for an excuse. What are you talking about? Nianqiao, Shen. You and I just chat occasionally. He even mentioned today that he wants to buy you a pair of dance shoes. Oh, I drawled, exaggerating my tone. Got it. My lips are sealed, and don't worry about the dance shoes. I actually just bought a new pair. I posted about it a couple of days ago, but you two have probably been too busy to notice. With that, I hurried back to my dorm, ignoring the look on her face that said she still wanted to argue too. As soon as I got back to the dorm, my roommate Yanting came over. Nianqiao, I heard Shinyu from Class 1 got called into the counselor's office, something about being caught dating early, but the teacher didn't catch the girl. You're pretty close to him. I've been stuck on this all day, and it's driving me crazy. Yanting loves gossip and has a big mouth. In my past life, she was the one who spread the word about Shinyu and me being called into the office together, that made our classmates jump to conclusions, and no matter how much I tried to explain myself afterwards, it was useless. I glanced at her and, under her expectant gaze, a plan began to form in my mind. Really, are you sure this gossip is reliable? Don't tell me you've been fooled, I said, pulling open the bed curtain. But I have seen him hanging around with a girl a lot lately. Seeing that I had new information, Yanting got even more excited. It's definitely true. My friend from my class said that just a few minutes after evening study hall ended, the homeroom teacher called Shinyu to the office. Supposedly, they saw him making out with a girl in the small park. Are you being this blatant? I feigned surprise. Yeah, I heard he completely shielded her, and even after they got spotted, he made sure she left first. Seems like he really cares about her. I lowered my eyes, afraid of the consequences, yet still not holding back. Can't control my own actions, and when things go wrong, all I do is look for someone else to blame. I'm not really sure. Since the start of this month, I've hardly hung out with Shinyu. Isn't he spending time with some girl from Class 4? I heard they met when she brought him water on the basketball court. Whoa, that fast. Weren't you two childhood friends? He's already moved on to someone else. Yanting looked utterly shocked. We just live in the same neighborhood, so we walk together sometimes. I'm going to be a dancing superstar in the future. I can't be dating now. It'll all be future scandal material. I said it jokingly with a laugh. Yanting nodded, wearing a thoughtful expression. The next day, I bought breakfast in the cafeteria and headed to class. It was still early, and the academic building was sparsely populated. I opened my English textbook and started practicing speaking. Gu Nianqiao, didn't we agree to meet off campus yesterday? Why didn't you show up? I ended up waiting alone for ages. Shinyu suddenly barged in through the door and cut me off. I rolled my eyes. What a way to start the morning, coming here to bother me. Who said we had plans? I told you I needed to study. And what do you mean you were waiting? Weren't you called to the office? I was just called in by the head teacher for a chat. He was encouraging me to work hard for the final year. I gave a perfunctory nod. Normally, students aren't allowed to leave campus at will. However, there's a popular chain snack shop just outside, so the school made a special exception, allowing trips there before 9:30 p.m. from Thursday to Saturday. So it used to be our routine. He'd wait for me at the gate, we'd go together, and head back to the dorms after shopping, but it's been over half a month since we last went. Seeing I hadn't responded, Xinyu spoke up again. Last night, at the classroom door, you spread rumors about Qingqing. She's really hurt by it. We hope you'll go and explain the truth to the other students. He didn't seem to be joking. I was so stunned. I was at a complete loss for words. Xinyu, you didn't seriously think I was still in the dark about this, did you? What? He stammered, guiltily averting his eyes. You two have been brazen enough this past month. Do you really think I wouldn't know, even if others don't? Stop pretending. You, Nianqiao, what are you talking about? Xinyu was still unwilling to admit it. Cut the act, will you? You still don't want to admit what's going on between you and Lin Qingqing. The department had already caught you. How much longer do you think you can keep this secret? I said, crossing my arms. Xinyu hadn't expected me to know so much. He froze on the spot for a long while. I ignored him and started reciting vocabulary words to myself. Nianqiao, he said after a while. Noticing I wasn't responding, he leaned in again. Can you tell the teacher that you were the one with me yesterday? Be gentle with her. She can't be discovered. I fell silent. In your mind, am I just supposed to take the fall for you? Is her Lin Qingqing's face a face, but mine, goo? Nianqiao's isn't. No, Nianqiao, haven't you always liked me? Just admit it this time, and after everything's over, I'll break up with Qingqing and be with you, Xinyu declared resolutely, with an air of having made a great sacrifice. I was speechless from being stunned by his barrage of words, yet in front of Xinyu, it was merely a sign of my conflicted feelings. He pulled a bottle of milk from his pocket, placed it on my desk, and said, Nianqiao, I know you have feelings for me. After all this is over, I'll make it up to you properly. With that, he left without a second glance at my embarrassed expression. I took a breath, surprised that all these years of knowing each other had led him to believe I'd always had feelings for him. I've always known Xinyu is good-looking, but after all this time, and given that I'm perfectly fine on my own, my feelings for him have never been more than those for a childhood friend. There was never any romantic interest. As classmates trickled into the classroom and the teacher began the lesson, I pushed the whole matter to the back of my mind. For Gu Nianqiao, the head teacher wants to see you in the office. The class monitor came over to my desk right after class ended. I put down my book, sighed, and thought to myself, here it comes. Xinyu must have told the principal it was me. I arrived at the office, knocked on the door, and walked in. As soon as I walked in, I saw the academic dean, my homeroom teacher, and the head teacher of class 1 sitting nearby, with Xinyu standing in front of them. Seeing me arrive, Xinyu gave me a meaningful glance. I ignored him and asked, pretending to be completely clueless, Teacher, did you need something from me? The homeroom teacher didn't look happy. Gu Nianqiao, I know your mind isn't usually on your studies, and you're planning to take the arts college entrance exam, but you really can't start dating at this critical point in your senior year. What, teacher? I'm not dating anyone. I'm sorry, teacher, we didn't mean to. Xinyu and I spoke at the same time. He then looked at me, stunned. I was just about to speak when Xinyu cut in first. Teacher, Nianqiao and I had genuine feelings for each other. Being with her won't affect my studies, and besides, she's already met the academic requirements. Xinyu, have you lost your mind? With grades as good as yours, how could you start a relationship at a time like this? Xinyu's homeroom teacher seemed quite furious, and the look she gave me was far from friendly. My homeroom teacher quickly added, yeah, look at you kids, just focus on acing your gaokao first, you can start dating afterward, no rush, and don't worry, your teachers won't stand in your way. They all started chiming in with advice, completely ignoring me standing right there. Seeing that the teachers had already believed it was him yesterday, Xinyu couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. Teacher, we were in the wrong about this matter, and we'll be more careful in the future. Teacher, wait a moment. Seeing Xinyu's cooperative attitude, the teachers were about to say something. I abruptly cut them off, and everyone turned to look at me. Xinyu immediately sensed something was wrong and tried to step forward to grab me, but I quickly dodged aside. I can't stop talking. Teacher, Xinyu's girlfriend isn't me. I'm not dating him. He's lying to you. Nianqiao, the teacher already found out. There's no point explaining, just be more careful from now on, Xinyu said in a panic. I shot him a glance, and the coldness in my eyes made his heart skip a beat. It was then he remembered that I hadn't given him a friendly look in a long time. Teacher, I don't know why Xinyu said I was his girlfriend. I barely had any contact with him lately. What he just said was a lie. The homeroom teacher looked at me, then at the flustered Xinyu. She knew me fairly well. While my grades weren't the best, my character was solid. Then she turned her gaze toward the director. Could there be some misunderstanding here? Student Nianqiao is usually very disciplined. The dean of students was a middle-aged man in his 40s, and he gave me a quick once-over. Hey Nianqiao, do you mind telling me what you did after class yesterday afternoon? Under the gaze of the four people opposite me, some curious, some tense, I began to speak slowly. I was in the office with Mr. Zhang all afternoon yesterday, discussing a problem. I didn't leave until evening study hall began. Mr. Zhang is my math teacher. Xinyu's face went pale. My homeroom teacher immediately stood up, pulled out her phone, and made a call. I stood by quietly, waiting. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Xinyu's tightly clenched fists and his pale, panicked face. I won't give you another chance to frame me this time. In less than 2 minutes, the homeroom teacher put down her phone and returned. Xinyu, even though your grades are excellent, that's no excuse to falsely accuse my student like this. That sentence put an end to our argument just now. 5. Since the matter no longer concerned me, my homeroom teacher told me to go back to class. I stayed right where I was. Teacher, regarding Xinyu's false accusations against me, I want him to apologize to me. Xinyu looked up at me in disbelief, while I remained completely unfazed. Classmate Gu is right. Xinyu, not only did you refuse to acknowledge your mistake, but you also lied to the teacher and slandered a fellow student. This kind of behavior is completely unacceptable. You should apologize to her. Xinyu's mouth fell open slightly. He stared at me rigidly, unable to speak. I stood there, motionless, seeing my cold indifference. He gritted his teeth and forced the words out. I'm sorry, Gu Nianqiao. Without so much as a glance in his direction, I turned back to the principal. Teacher, he's been spending quite a bit of time with a girl from class 4 lately. You might want to ask her, she might know something. With that, I turned and walked out of the office, leaving Xinyu behind to face the questioning of the 3 teachers. Not long after returning to the classroom, I spotted Lin Qingqing walking past the window toward the office. She looked flustered and clearly hadn't noticed me. The class was already halfway through, and English, one of my weak subjects, was on the agenda. I quickly pulled out my book and started jotting down key points. Class finally ended. Lost in thought, I slowly made my way to the office door. Mr. Wang, we didn't start it, I swear. Did Gu Nianqiao tell you we're together? She's always had a crush on Xinyu. She's just jealous. I froze in my tracks. That was Lin Qingqing's voice. Through the half-open window, I saw her standing in front of our homeroom teacher, Mr. Wang, speaking animatedly. Gu Nianqiao. Mr. Wang adjusted his glasses, his tone skeptical. She never mentioned anything to me. It was Director Li who saw you getting a bit too close at the park. Lin Qingqing suddenly burst into tears. Mr. Wang, there's really nothing between us. We're just classmates. Someone must be spreading rumors. It might even be Gu Nianqiao. She's always had it in for me. I didn't even bother listening anymore. Chances are the teacher already knows the truth. No matter how Lin Qingqing tried to defend herself, she was just buying time. Back to the classroom. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Lin Qingqing return. Her eyes red and swollen. She must not handle pressure well. She cracked under questioning so quickly. She finally noticed me and shot me a resentful glare. I curled my lip in disdain. The bell rang and I stepped out the door, unsurprised to find Xinyu blocking the entrance and Lin Qingqing with red-rimmed eyes. Gu Nianqiao, how could you say that about Qianqian? Xinyu was clearly furious, his chest heaving up and down. I turned and walked away. Gu Nianqiao, he shouted, catching up with an angry expression. I quickened my pace, but he grabbed my wrist in an instant. The warm touch of his hand made my skin crawl. Let go. I shook off his hand. We were past all pretense now, with no need to show even a shred of respect. Gu Nianqiao, you snitched behind our backs and got Qingqing's parents called in. This isn't over. Xinyu stood rooted to the spot, shouting after the resolute figure. 6. Evening self-study begins. The moment I stepped into the classroom, the clamor of conversation died instantly. A dozen pairs of eyes snapped toward me, then just as quickly looked away, as if I carried some kind of plague. An eerie silence hung in the air, broken only by a few scattered, deliberately hushed whispers. My fingers tightened unconsciously around my backpack strap, knuckles turning white. Taking a deep breath, Gu Nianqiao lifted her chin and walked straight to her seat. Well, if it isn't our little snitch extraordinaire, a sharp female voice rang out from the back row, drawing a ripple of suppressed laughter. I didn't turn around, because I knew it was Lin Qingqing's friend, Li Shui. I just carried on with what I was doing, taking my seat as if I hadn't heard a thing. When I reached my desk, I froze. The once pristine desktop was now defaced with ugly red marker scrawls, snitch and shameless. My breath caught, a sudden blow to the chest as if I'd been punched. Who did this? I spun around to face the whole class, my voice louder than I'd expected. The classroom was deathly quiet. Some students kept their heads down, pretending to read, while others stared at me with the eager eyes of spectators waiting for a show. My heart sank. For such a drastic change to happen in just a few hours, Xinyu must have said something. At that moment, Li Shui sprang to her feet. Gu Nianqiao, you had it coming. Who told you to go tattling to the principal? Now Qingqing's parents are here and want to pull her out of school. She's been suspended. What's that got to do with me? I calmed down and locked eyes with Li Shui, seeing how confidently I stood my ground. My classmates grew restless in their seats and began whispering among themselves. Li Shui was so furious she was practically panting with rage. If you hadn't snitched, Qingqing wouldn't have ended up in such a terrible situation. Her family had to take her home yesterday, and you don't even show a hint of remorse. Humph. Lin Qingqing and Xinyu were the ones who couldn't even hide their puppy love, and now the teacher found out. What does that have to do with me? Humph. Everyone knows you've had a crush on Xinyu for so long, always sticking to him like glue. Now that you see Qingqing and him together, you're just jealous. Li Shui crossed her arms, giving me that look like she could see right through me. I let out a soft scoff. Xinyu and I were just ordinary friends to begin with. It was bad enough that he lied to the teacher to cover for Lin Qingqing, claiming I was the one who'd been acting too familiar with him. Now he's even encouraging you all to bully me at school. I took a step to the side, letting them see the glaring mark on my desk. Hi. School classrooms have surveillance cameras. I don't let anyone who hurts me off the hook easily. That was you. Li Shui was about to say something more when the class bell rang. The patrolling teacher knocked on the door, signaling for us to settle down for self-study. Li Shui reluctantly sat down, but the curious stares from her classmates made her fidget uncomfortably. Our classmates aren't fools. Everyone heard what I just said, and now they know Lin Qingqing isn't as innocent as she seems. The next day, Saturday, there weren't many classes in the afternoon. I pushed open the familiar door, and the familiar piano stood quietly in the morning light. I dropped my backpack and turned on the music I knew best from my past life, the dance choreographed specifically for me by my teacher, set to a traditional style tune, arranged just for the art competition. When the dance ended, I realized my face was already wet with tears. I hastily wiped it with the back of my hand when suddenly I heard applause from behind. I turned around and was stunned to see Xinyu. Damn, that persistent pest. Nian Qiao, you need to apologize to Qingqing. Then, on Monday, in front of the whole school, you must say that you were the one who was with me, and that Qingqing was just framed by you. If you do that, we'll forgive you. Xinyu stood below the stage, momentarily captivated by her dancing figure, but his expression quickly reverted to one of aloof superiority. I almost laughed in exasperation. Me. To her, she's the one who framed me. I know, Xinyu said nervously, glancing toward the door. It's just, her family situation is very complicated, and she's emotionally unstable. I've already spoken to her parents. I'll cover her tuition so she can come back to school. So what? At least you still get to go to school. It's not the same. Qingqing is really upset because the teacher scolded her. Gu Nianqiao looked at the boy she'd grown up with and felt like she was looking at a complete stranger. She's upset. What about me? Are you just going to throw me under the bus? My voice trembled. Do you have any idea that since this morning, the whole school has been calling me a snitch? Have you seen what they've done to my desk? Xinyu lowered his head. If you just go and apologize to clear things up, I'll explain everything to everyone. I promise. Suit yourself. I'm not going to lie, I said, then turned and walked away. There was a camera in front of the dance studio screen, which I had left running from the start. I originally wanted to record my first dance after being reborn, but I never expected it would also capture Xinyu's ugly, true colors in this life. Without that immense pressure and with Li Shui not snatching away my spot in the art competition, I'm destined to soar higher and higher, far away from these wretched people. 7. After reviewing my prepared piece, I felt a wave of relief. My past life's experiences hadn't diminished my dance talent. On the contrary, they had infused my movements with a raw, fighting spirit. So, brimming with confidence, I entered the preliminary round of the dance category in the arts competition. On the day of the preliminary auditions, I stood by the backstage curtain, peeking through a gap at the audience. The auditorium was packed. In the front row sat the 5 judges, one of whom was the vice chairman of the city's dance association. My fingers unconsciously twisted the hem of the rented tang suit, my palms damp with a thin film of sweat. Next up, Xiangyan High School, Gu Nianqiao, solo dance Qingyang. The announcement echoed through the hall. I took a deep breath and stepped into the center of the stage. As the spotlight hit me, I saw Lin Qingqing in the front row lean in to whisper something to Xinyu. In unison, they both looked up toward the stage. The opening notes began to swell, and I closed my eyes, letting every stray thought drift away. When I opened them again, there was Nothing left in the world but me and the music. With the first movement, my body rose as lightly as a feather lifted by the wind. The dance began with a gentle rhythm and soft music, as if I were in the rainy season of the Jiangnan water towns. Drip, drop, light and slow, the crescendo hit like a torrential downpour, fierce and relentless. Moved by the music, I spun and danced. My body seemed to take on a will of its own, every motion flowing with a powerful, effortless grace. In this moment, I forgot the arguments that had happened, the rumors spreading through the school, and the false accusations from others. My heart held only the rhythm, dancing along with the music. The dance ended, and the auditorium fell completely silent, every gaze fixed on the figure slowly coming to a stop under the spotlight. A hush fell for a moment, then thunderous applause erupted from the audience. What an amazing performance! Your dance was powerful and full of emotion. After discussing it, we've unanimously decided to let you advance directly to the finals. The judge at the table picked up the microphone and said something that lifted my spirits. More applause erupted, and I bowed once again, a smile constantly tugging at the corners of my mouth. My legs were slightly trembling from exerting so much effort, but it didn't dampen my wonderful mood in the slightest. Before I left, I passed by the lounge and noticed the gazes coming from within, admiration, envy, and a touch of jealousy. After leaving the auditorium, I saw my homeroom teacher, Gu Nianxiao. "That was a wonderful performance. I'm so proud of you," she said, patting my shoulder. The genuine pride in her eyes and the excitement in her voice were unmistakable. "Thank you, teacher, I'll keep working hard," I replied with a nod. After finding a quiet spot, I pulled out my phone to call my parents. Within seconds of the call connecting, my mom's voice came through. "Hello, Jojo. I watched your match live. Sweetie, you were amazing, Mom," I called out, and suddenly, the sorrow that had been weighing on me for so long broke through my defenses and overwhelmed me. My throat tightened and tears streamed down uncontrollably. "Oh, what's wrong, Jojo? Is the pressure getting to you? Do you want to come home and rest for a couple of days? Don't cry, sweetheart, Mom's here. How about I ask Dad to pick you up this afternoon?" I choked back a sob, and it took me a long moment to force the words out. "It's okay, Mom. I can get back by myself after the competition." After a long exchange of pleasantries, I hung up the phone and noticed a new text message. "Nianxiao, you danced beautifully. I had no idea you were that good." Xinyu. I stared at the screen, at a loss for words. The moment I got my phone back, I had blocked Xinyu, Lin Qingqing, and all their close friends. I had just deleted the message when I heard Lin Qingqing's voice nearby. Turning my head, I saw her, slender and pale, looking like she hadn't been doing well at all over the past couple of days. "Nianxiao." Lin's voice was soft, almost trembling with emotion. "Can we talk?" Gu Nianxiao paused in her steps, her gaze cool. "What is it?" Lin bit her lip lightly, her eyes slightly reddened as if she had suffered a great injustice. "I know I've done many terrible things before. I truly regret it," she said, taking a step forward. She reached out to take my hand, but I pulled away. "Xinyu told me I shouldn't have treated you that way. I was just so scared of getting caught by the teacher that I acted." On impulse, she lowered her head, her voice trailing off. "Could you forgive me? I promise. If you just explain to everyone and tell them I misunderstood you, I'll go and clear things up." I stared at her quietly, my gaze calm but my words sharp. "Is that so? Then why didn't you clear things up when the rumors first started? If I weren't mentally strong, do you think I'd have been able to finish this competition at all?" Lin Qingqing's expression stiffened for a moment, but she quickly reverted to that innocent look. "I was too impulsive back then. I really know I was wrong. Besides, it didn't affect your competition, did it? Let's just get along from now on, okay?" I let out a soft laugh and shook my head. "Lin Qingqing, there's no need to put on a show for me. If you really want to clear things up, go do it now instead of playing the victim here." Lin Qingqing's expression slowly shifted. She stared at me, the fragility in her eyes gradually fading, replaced by a cold, faint smile. "Oh, so you're just going to throw my kindness back in my face?" She tilted her head slightly, her voice suddenly turning icy. "You think you've won, just because you can dance?" Unfazed, I picked up my dance bag and made to leave. "I have no interest in arguing with you." Lin Qingqing suddenly grabbed my wrist, her nails digging almost into my skin. "Gu Nianxiao, you'd better not get too cocky." She leaned in, lowering her voice with a malicious smile. "Do you really think you can keep Xinyu hooked? Do you think you can stay this glamorous forever?" I winced in pain, frowning as I forcefully shook off her hand and said coldly, "Get away from me." Lin took a step back, her expression darkening completely. She stared at me and said, her words slow and deliberate, "Fine, you just wait." Lin turned away lightly, her shoes thudding heavily on the floor, producing a harsh sound. at the corner, she glanced back, a sneer curling at the corner of her lips. You're going to regret this. I stood my ground and whispered, you and Xinyu are both scum. After Lin quietly left, I paused to think. According to what Lin Qingqing said, Xinyu actually started speaking up for me in front of her. Thinking back to that text message earlier, I shivered uncontrollably. More than his revenge, what's truly repulsive is his self-deluded wavering between me and Lin Qingqing. I don't think he's truly reformed. He's just seen this radiant side of me and is now weighing the value of Lin Qingqing against mine. It's laughable that after all this time together, he's only just realized. Too bad for him. I've already seen through him for the selfish, weak-willed person he truly is. When it comes down to it, no one thinks what happened these past few days makes him out to be some monster. In the teacher's eyes, he's the top student with excellent grades. To our classmates, he's the devoted, romantic guy. Now, all the gossip and rumors at school are focused on me and Lin Qingqing. People just see Xinyu as this poor, lovesick soul who made a mistake trying to protect the one he loves. As for me, even though I clarified everything that day and people know Lin Qingqing and Xinyu tried to use me as a scapegoat, there are still plenty of people who don't know the full story gossiping about it behind my back. But it doesn't matter, the evidence I have is enough to bury them. 9. As I pushed open the front door, the familiar aroma of a home-cooked meal greeted me. My mother was bustling in the kitchen, while my father sat on the sofa, watching the recording of my competition from that morning on the television. This scene had played out in my dreams countless times, and now it was right before my eyes. Mom, Dad, I'm home, I said softly, my throat tight. Is that my Jojo home? Mom peeked out from the kitchen, her hands still dusted with flour. Go wash your hands, sweetie. I made your favorite spicy wontons today. I sent the housekeeper home early so it's just the three of us for a nice family dinner. Dad set his newspaper down and beckoned with a smile. Come here, let me get a look at you. Have you lost weight again? I stood frozen in place, my nails digging deep into my palms. Don't cry, don't let them see anything's wrong. I didn't want my parents to worry about me anymore. The memory of them lying frail in the ICU in my past life haunted me. Along with the beeping sound of my father's cardiac monitor, I took a deep breath. What's wrong? Her mother asked, drying her hands as she walked over. She placed a worried hand on her daughter's forehead. You look so pale. Are you feeling unwell? The instant his warm, dry palm touched my skin, I nearly broke down. I took a half step back, forcing a smile. It's nothing, just, I'm worn out from practice. My father poured a cup of hot water and pressed it into my hand. Don't push yourself so hard. We watched your competition video from this morning over a dozen times. You were fantastic. So many people online are praising you. I've been bragging about it to your uncles for ages. The hot water scalded my palm red. I should go change. Then I fled into my room like a fugitive and locked the door. Is the child under too much pressure? Sigh. That's just how senior year is. I buried my face in the pillow, letting the tears soak into the fabric. How she wished she could run out and hug them, wailing just like she did as a child. After a long while, I lifted my head and went to the bathroom to wash my face. My phone let out a asterisk. Ding asterisk. I picked it up to look. It was a video shared by Yen Ting. Ancient style beauty art competition makes a stunning debut, astonishing the audience. Wow, Nianqiao, you're trending now. Your dance video made it to the hot search list. That's my performance from today in the video, and it's already gotten over 1 million likes. I scrolled through the comments in surprise. Most were full of praise. Is this really a high schooler? So professional. The emotional expression is spot on. I cried. Wow, that flexibility is insane. 10. Just as I was completely absorbed, a new comment popped up. I know this person, acts all high and mighty on the surface, but she's actually a homewrecker who specializes in stealing other people's boyfriends. My fingers froze on the screen. The commenter's ID was a string of random numbers with no profile picture, but the sheer venom in the tone instantly made me think of one person. Lin Qingqing. I closed the video, hoping to just ignore the comment, but deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. As the video spread, attacks like this were only going to multiply. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, Lin Qingqing glared at her phone screen, gritting her teeth. She kept rewatching Gu Nianqiao's dance video, and each time she watched, the flames of jealousy in her heart burned even higher. What are you staring at so intently? A gruff male voice came from behind. Lin turned her head slightly and saw her cousin Zhao Chang walking into her bedroom, cigarette dangling from his lips. 5 years her senior, Zhao Chang had dropped out of high school and drifted through life ever since, now leading a small gang of hoodlums. Nothing, just a bitch. Lin gently locked her phone screen. Zhao Chang leaned in and snatched her phone. Let me see. Oh, this chick's pretty good, dance as well. What's so great about her? Lin snatched her phone back. Just a fake innocent slut who specially targets other people's boyfriends, Zhao Chang raised an eyebrow. Your little boyfriend, what's his name again? Xinyu. Lin Qianqian nodded grimly. Right after the game ended today, he actually sent her a message complimenting her. I saw it with my own eyes. That wench has always been trailing after Xinyu like a shadow. Oh ho, is the little cousin jealous? Zhao Chang teased with a smirk, ruffling her hair. Want your big brother to teach her a lesson for you? Lin Qingqing's eyes lit up. Really? Would I lie to you? Zhao Chang blew a smoke ring, but, you know, your brother's a bit short on cash lately. Lin Qingqing caught his meaning immediately. I'll give it to you as soon as my allowance comes in next month. Deal. Zhao Chang crushed his cigarette butt. Go ahead, tell me, how do you want to mess with her? Lin bit her lip thoughtfully for a moment. Keep an eye on her for me first, figure out her routine. I've been taking time off from school these past few days because I know this whole online situation isn't just going to blow over. Sure enough, that comment caught a lot of attention from the very beginning, and people started asking questions. Then several accounts began to chime in with negative, inflammatory remarks. I opened the video platform and found thousands of comments flooding in under the latest dance video. She looks so innocent, but she's actually filthy in private. She even tried to flirt with someone else's boyfriend behind their back. So gross. With a waist that slim, it's bound to feel amazing. This kind of vulgar language is endless. Lin Qingqing was curled up in the beanbag chair in her bedroom, the cold glow of her phone screen illuminating her twisted smile. She had just posted explosive content from her 5th newly registered Weibo burner account. Irrefutable proof. Chat logs exposing XX High's prodigy dancer XX Qiao as a homewrecker are leaked. The image is a carefully photoshopped screenshot of a WeChat chat. I messaged Xinyu to see if he'd like to go to a dance performance together, but he turned me down. There are also photos of the two of them eating together and entering and exiting the residential complex gate together. These ordinary interactions between friends, framed by the headline and viewed from a particular angle, come across as solid evidence. That's when the class group chat went wild. Taking a deep breath, I looked down at the stream of vile comments beneath me. Just then, my phone rang. It was my homeroom teacher, Nianqiao. What's going on online? The competition staff just called me. They said these comments could affect your advancement and eligibility to compete. It's alright, teacher, those are all just rumors. I'll clear things up. After placating the teacher, I hung up the phone, turned around, and headed downstairs. Just as my mother was coming up to find me, the sharp crack of a ceramic mug shattering on the floor cut me off. Tea leaves and porcelain shards splattered onto my father's trouser leg, yet he just kept staring. Transfixed. At the viral hashtag high school dancer affair exposed, accompanied by a grotesquely photoshopped picture of Gu Nianqiao. Xiao, my darling, Mom said as she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around me. I said, Mom, everything online is just nonsense. Mom knows. Mom's just worried you might get treated unfairly. I'm going to rip those bastards' mouths off. Are my Gu family's daughters to be slandered by anyone? Father slammed his palm onto the table, making a loud thud. My mother held me in her arms with tender concern. I felt the warmth and strength of her embrace, the gentle stroke of her hand along my arm, and my heart slowly grew calm. Jojo, what's going on with that Shin boy? Things have gotten to this point, and he still hasn't come out to explain himself, Mother asked. Puzzled, I sighed. At this point, even though they had always thought highly of Xinyu since he was young, my parents were now deeply worried. I had to put an end to their hopes for him, so I began to recount Xinyu and Lin Qingqing's recent actions in a measured tone. That ungrateful wretch, that blind cur, I'm going to have a serious talk with old Shen. Father couldn't take it anymore and shot to his feet. Dad, I called out to stop him, waving my phone. Don't worry, Mom and Dad, I have evidence of the things they did before. I'll clear everything up. Good, that's my daughter, Gu Jianhua's girl. Father stopped in his tracks, the anger still on his face, yet now mixed with pride and heartache. He walked over and gave my shoulder a pat. Go on, Nianqiao. You've grown up. It's good that you can solve problems on your own. Mom and Dad will always be your solid support. 11. The college entrance exam is in 2 months, and the competition finals are in just 2 weeks. On top of that, the online situation has really blown up, so I laid out all the evidence I had gathered over the past few days and pieced together the timeline as quickly as I could. I was sitting in front of my computer, my fingers trembling slightly over the enter key. Once I hit send, Xinyu and Lin Qingqing would never get back on their feet. The full truth behind the campus beauty love triangle incident. 3 pieces of evidence lie quietly in the attachment. In the classroom surveillance footage, Lin Qingqing brought her best friend Li Shui to smear my desk with red paint, writing words like tattletale and shameless. The audio recording says, Gu Nianqiao, don't be so arrogant, just wait, I'll make you regret this. Lin Qingqing's voice is sweet, yet sinister, like a venomous snake hissing. There are also several WeChat screenshots, over 30 messages sent by Xinyu, all meant to get me to take the fall for his girlfriend. The last one reads, just pretend you're helping me. If Qingqing's dad finds out we're dating, he'll beat her to death. As soon as this attachment was released, online users following the story went wild. I refreshed my feed and instantly saw over 100 comments. Still piling up non-stop, my phone started vibrating uncontrollably, and the Weibo notification count shot up to 99 plus, at Breezy Skies. Just saw the evidence file, coming back to apologize. We were all used as pawns at Gummy Bear. Doxed the wrong person. Now let's find the real culprit. The trending charts were swept up like a hurricane. Hashtag XX High Schools Lin Xing exposed for orchestrating school bullying behind the scenes. Hashtag explosive. Hashtag Susoft Rice Man. Hashtag trending. Opening Lin Qingqing's Weibo. Her latest post is flooded with 30,000 comments. The photo she posted 2 days ago showing her holding hands with Xinyu has now been turned into various satirical memes, the most popular one reading, "Hold my hand, let her take the fall." My phone suddenly vibrated. I opened it and saw it was a call from Xinyu's mother, Aunt Shen. I was about to hang up, but thinking of our friendship over the years, I still tapped to answer. Nianqiao, what's going on online? How could you possibly do something like that? Auntie, my evidence hasn't been photoshopped at all. People online have already verified it. You should go and persuade Xinyu to apologize instead. No, I've looked into it, and Xinyu is just being taken advantage of by that Lin Qingqing. Listen, could you remove the part about Xiaoyu? We've known each other for so many years, and I've always treated you well. I've even thought of you as a daughter-in-law. Why didn't Auntie have Xinyu say something to clear things up when those rumors first started spreading online? I placed my phone on the table, cutting off Aunt Shen mid-sentence. Well, Auntie just didn't see it, and she doesn't usually pay much attention to things online. Nianqiao, I couldn't be bothered to listen anymore and hung up on her. Right now, my inbox is flooded with apologies. 3 days later, the principal himself placed the invitation to the city's art festival on my desk. Miss Gu, considering public sentiment, he wiped his brow. The organizing committee has decided to reinstate your eligibility. On the way home, a plain tree leaf landed on my shoulder. My phone vibrated again. Another missed call from Xinyu, his 10th or so. The last text message read, "Can you see me? Just for old time's sake." These past few days, Xinyu had been trying every possible excuse and method to get in touch with me. I'm turning off my phone and blocking this new text. The wind swept the fallen leaves into the air, just like the golden dust drifting down from the theater ceiling the first time I stepped on stage. On the 7th day of standing outside my building, Xinyu finally fell ill with a high fever after being caught in the downpour. To focus on my studies without being disturbed by those awful people, my parents hired a tutor for me and arranged for me to move to a quieter place, so I could prepare in peace for the final push. The two of them also refused the daily apologies from Shen's parents at their doorstep. Instead, they bought plane tickets and headed south for an impromptu getaway. Furthermore, through Yan Ting's account, I learned that Lin Qingqing's parents had gone to the school to make another scene, even slapping her twice in public. At this point, no amount of money Xinyu could offer would help, as the school had already expelled Lin Qingqing. He himself received a major disciplinary record. A mark like that in your senior year of high school essentially follows you for life and will impact your university admissions. What's more, with this major scandal now surrounding him, the Shen family's stock is plummeting at a rate you can practically see with the naked eye. I scrolled through my phone, looking at the memes mocking Xinyu, like the one titled "Years of Childhood Friendship Can't Compete with a Sweet Kiss from His Girlfriend," along with the photos dug up by netizens. These included evidence of the Shen family's cover-up from years ago, images of disabled workers and their families holding blood-stained petitions after a Shen real estate construction accident caused by safety violations. The pent-up resentment in my heart finally erupted with a vengeance. From now on, you can no longer interfere with my life. 12 At the mouth of the alley at 1:20 a.m., the moonlight was swallowed by dark clouds. I deliberately swung my backpack as I walked into the narrow alley. Through my earpiece came the static-laced voice of the head bodyguard. "Target is in position. White van at 3 o'clock." Out of the corner of my eye, I caught the flickering red glow of a cigarette ember in the car window. It was the cheap Nanyang Double Happiness brand Zhao Cheng always smoked. "All alone now, little bitch," Zhao Cheng's shadow fell over me from behind, heavy with the stench of liquor and betel nut. His greasy hand had just landed on my shoulder when I swiftly pulled out my pepper spray and blasted him right in the face. He couldn't dodge in time and let out a blood-curdling shriek. "You bitch," he snarled. Eyes bloodshot and panting heavily, he charged at me like a wild boar, only to come to an abrupt halt halfway. The ex-Special Forces bodyguard I hired pinned him against the wall with a joint lock. Calmly, I fished the still-recording phone from Zhao Cheng's pocket. The screen clearly showed a message from Lin Qingqing sent 3 minutes ago. "Get a clear shot, I want to see her stripped naked." Surprised, I tapped his head with the edge of my phone. In my past life, it was also on this very road that I encountered those thugs, which led to the final tragedy. Looking back now, it couldn't have been unrelated to Lin Qingqing. From the very beginning, she wanted me dead. I've had my suspicions for a long time. Even if I took the fall for them in my past life, it shouldn't have led to those vile rumors spreading across campus. Dating itself is widely accepted among young people. How could it have led to such a dire outcome for me? Being reborn allowed me to discover early on that it was Lin Qingqing who instigated her little clique to spread those rumors, and those thugs at the end. She's definitely connected to them, too. The wail of sirens grew louder, and I spoke over Zhao Cheng's furious shouts. "This video, along with your record for molesting that female student 2 years ago, will make the news." Then, I walked toward the bright path illuminated by the approaching police cars. 13 In the end, Zhao Cheng was sentenced to 13 years in prison for attempted rape and the sexual assault of a female student. Prison surveillance footage showed him banging his head against the wall every night as one of the most despised crimes. His fellow inmates carved the word rapist into his arm using a toothbrush handle. As for Lin Qingqing, she still wore her school uniform during the trial, but no one remembered it was once the uniform of a top-tier city high school. Her mother and father publicly disowned her on the spot and absconded with the funds Xinyu had originally left for her final year of high school and subsequent university expenses. In the women's prison library, she'd always fixate on the wall-mounted TV, which was replaying my final performance. Rumor has it Xinyu skipped the college entrance exam and was found passed out in an internet cafe on exam day, his admission ticket stuffed inside an empty liquor bottle. On the day Xin Group declared bankruptcy, he stood on the rooftop of our alma mater and wrote me a letter. The letter was eventually folded into a paper airplane and launched into the rain along with his body, its message reading, "We could have been different." Hearing that news made me feel sick, like I'd swallowed a fly. The final performance at the art competition was Nirvana, expressing my anger and sorrow over the tragic experiences of my past life, my determination and hard work in this rebirth, and the joy of a new beginning. As the curtain fell, the audience erupted in applause, but someone in the judges' panel raised a sign that read, "Sorry." After the college entrance exams, my acceptance letter and Lin Qingqing's verdict arrived. On the same day, I used them to press the withered magnolia petals. On the morning I left home, my parents secretly tucked my very first pair of dance shoes into my suitcase. With Nirvana and those shoes, I set out on a new journey. The end. Story 2. I kept the poor school heartthrob, but he didn't like me, and he would charge me extra if we kissed too often. Later, my family went bankrupt. I tentatively probed him carefully, saying, "Xia Yuqin, the extra money you charged for our kisses is enough for me to keep another male model. Can you give me a discount?" The corners of his lips curved into a mocking arc as he refused me. Then, he kissed me for a long time and took all my money. I finally gave up. It turned out that he really only liked my money. During the club dinner party, the game of truth or dare heated up the whole atmosphere. Only I was absent-minded. Even though Xia Yuqin was sitting opposite me, my mind was filled with the earnest words my father had said to me this morning. "Lily, there's a high probability that our family will go bankrupt." Bankruptcy. Hey, Towley, what are you doing? It's your turn. Do you choose truth or dare? When I came back to my senses, I realized that everyone's eyes were on me. I slowly let out an "oh" and said, "Then I choose truth." The questioner cleared his throat. "Towley, may I ask, are you in a relationship now?" Suddenly, Xia Yuqin opposite me knocked the cup in his hand on the table, neither too hard nor too soft. I looked up at the sound and met his deep gaze. I understood what he meant. He was warning me not to mention him. Of course I wouldn't. After all, we were just in a sugar baby relationship. I shook my head seriously and said, "No, I'm not." After answering, I even gave Xia Yuqin a look that said, "Don't worry," but he stopped looking at me. The upper half of his face was hidden in the dim light, and I could only see him lightly twitch his lips. I wasn't pressed with more questions, and soon it was someone else's turn. I sank back into the anxiety of my impending downfall. The most disappointing thing was that I was probably about to be unable to afford to keep Xiaoyuqin. I sighed and gulped down another glass of fruit beer. I don't know how long it had passed. When it was my turn again, I was already so drunk that I was dizzy. Towley, do you choose truth or dare this time? Alcohol emboldened me. I knocked my cup on the table and said, dare. Okay, let me see. Please randomly choose an opposite-sex person on the spot and kiss any part of his body. This was a godsend opportunity. Kissing Xiaoyuqin in such an occasion, he surely wouldn't have the nerve to ask me for money. I blinked slowly, then propped myself up on the table and stood up, staggering over to Xiaoyuqin. Our eyes met, and I informed him without room for refusal, I'm going to kiss you. The private room fell into an eerie silence. The next second, it erupted into deafening laughter. Come on, is Tao the junior student too drunk or crazy? Does she really have no self-awareness at all? The last person who used the dare as an excuse to forcefully hug Brother Qin was thrown far away by Brother Qin. I was just drunk, not stupid. I turned around and retorted to them righteously, he will let me kiss him. It was clearly Xiaoyuqin who took the initiative to let me keep him in the first place. He was not only a softie but also spent a lot of money, so he would always press me down and kiss me when we had the slightest disagreement. As his sugar mommy, I couldn't seem too stingy. I could only pretend to be nonchalant and give him most of my pocket money. After I finished speaking, they laughed even louder. Okay, let her kiss, don't stop her. I'm really looking forward to seeing how far she'll be thrown by Brother Qin. I was so angry that my ears seemed to be smoking even when I spoke to Xiaoyuqin. There was a hint of venting my anger in my tone. Bring your legs closer together, otherwise, how can I sit? Haha, I'm dying of laughter. She even wants to sit on Brother Qin's lap. Xiaoyuqin had been lazily curling his lips throughout, and he wordlessly adjusted his sitting posture. I climbed onto his lap and sat sideways, satisfied. I kissed his side face. Under normal circumstances, I would have to pay him 88 yuan for this. Now I could get away with not paying. The private room fell silent in an instant, and everyone's jaws dropped to the ground. When Xiaoyuqin looked down at me, his chin rubbed against my face. Are you satisfied? I pushed my luck and asked, if I'm not satisfied, can I kiss you again? After all, there weren't many opportunities like this to get something for free. Xiaoyuqin stared at me, and his Adam's apple rolled. No. Then, I was thrown back to the ground by him. There was a hubbub around, and it seemed that they were saying something like Xiaoyuqin was too decent to make a girl lose face, and I had taken advantage of him. I picked up my glass and solemnly toasted that person, expressing my agreement. Saving 88 yuan was really taking advantage. As the alcohol took effect, I was extremely sleepy. As soon as the dinner party ended, I went straight back to the apartment I rented off campus. I threw myself onto the sofa and closed my eyes. Not long after I fell asleep, Xiaoyuqin also came back. One warm kiss after another landed on my face, nose, and forehead. I frowned and pushed him away. I want to sleep. Didn't you say you weren't satisfied with the kiss? I ignored him and buried my face in the crevice of the sofa to continue sleeping. Xiaoyuqin was also amused by my reaction. He directly picked me up, pressed me to straddle his lap, and slowly taunted me. Can you not be so selfish, junior student? Which professor taught you to play hard to get and then pretend to be dead after flirting? I was forcefully woken up and was extremely annoyed. I leaned against his neck and rubbed it, whispering softly, but I don't really want to. Xiaoyuqin misunderstood what I meant. He tilted his head and gently touched my ear. Okay, I don't really want to do anything. Don't be afraid. I hadn't thought in that direction at all. Just a kiss was so expensive. If it were something else, with my current situation of going bankrupt, I simply couldn't afford his escort fee. I propped myself up on his shoulders and sat up, explaining to him with sleepy eyes. No, I mean I don't want to kiss. Xiaoyuqin sized me up for a moment. What's wrong? The cool light of the pale tone refracted on his eyebrows and eyes. When he stared at someone intently, it really gave people the illusion of deep affection. I was distracted by this illusion, and a glimmer of hope welled up in my heart. Because it's too expensive, I tentatively probed him carefully again. Xiaoyuqin, the extra money you charged for our kisses is enough for me to keep another male model. Can you give me a discount? Xiaoyuqin stared at me without speaking. I somehow felt a chill down my spine. After a long while, he finally nodded in understanding. You think I'm too expensive? Xiaoyuqin's fingertips carelessly twirled around my hair. Do you know that if we change to another relationship, you won't have to spend a single penny? My eyes instantly lit up. A romantic relationship, a couple relationship. His gaze locked onto my face, and he didn't answer. After several more seconds, he said indifferently, it's a stranger relationship. Well, do you want to consider ending our relationship? It was like a bolt from The blue that wilted me. I was reluctant to part with Xia Yuqin and tried to bargain with him desperately. I don't want to end it. Is it really not possible to lower the price a little bit? The coldness in Xia Yuqin's eyes became more and more obvious. He was too lazy to waste words with me and directly forced a deal on me. He pressed me into his arms and kissed me for a long time while taking a breath. He bit my lower lip. And the force was a bit harsh. What on earth do you take me for? Do you really think I'm that cheap? Xia Yuqin seemed a bit too extreme. Maybe I had expressed myself a bit wrongly, and he misunderstood that I was saying he wasn't worth the price, but there was no need for him to call himself names. Right, Xia Yuqin rarely showed me a cold face. This was the second time. The last time was during the period when my father reduced my living expenses. Xia Yuqin and I went to a KTV to celebrate the birthday of my best friend Song Yun, who was also the only person in the whole school who knew about the relationship between Xia Yuqin and me. She hired 6 male models to celebrate her birthday. I was curled up on the sofa, playing with Xia Yuqin's hands. Seeing this, Song Yun laughed out loud. Hey, you two seem to be in a relationship, is that so? Xia Yuqin smiled with his eyelids drooping, then his fingers curled, and he wrapped my hand in his palm. I looked up in confusion. Then I heard Xia Yuqin call my name. Then do you want to be in a relationship? I was a bit stunned. Was I going to change from an authoritative sugar mommy to a girlfriend? Song Yun reached out and poked me. Hurry up and agree. Agree quickly. If you agree, you won't have to spend so much money on him anymore. Money. This triggered a sensitive word. I immediately turned to look at Song Yun. She said contentedly, the money you save would be enough for you to keep several more male models at the same time, right? Song Yun paid 23,000 yuan a month to keep a male model. I was immersed in my own world and began to calculate the accounts attentively. I didn't even notice that the two of them were arguing. Xia Yuqin sneered. Ms. Song's view of love allows for keeping other people while being in a relationship. What's wrong with that? I make it clear in advance. If they don't like it, they don't have to be in a relationship with me. And this kind of situation is quite common, isn't it? Song Yun took my arm and said, right, Tao Tao. I casually perfunctorily replied, MMM. Xia Yuqin didn't say anything more. I finally figured out that I had been giving Xia Yuqin so much money every month. If we were in a relationship, I could save a large sum of money. I hurriedly pulled at Xia Yuqin's sleeve and nodded enthusiastically. Okay, let's be in a relationship, Xia Yuqin. But for some reason, he suddenly changed his mind. I was just saying it casually. Xia Yuqin leaned over to pick up the cup on the coffee table and, taking the opportunity, pulled his sleeve back from my hand. My mood was like riding a roller coaster, and it instantly dropped. Song Yun couldn't stand it and snorted. Tao Tao, do we have to endure this kind of treatment even though we're spending money? Dump him, and I'll introduce you to other handsome guys. Xia Yuqin sneered disdainfully, lowered his eyes, and looked at the cup in his hand without saying a word. I feebly changed the subject, acting as if nothing had happened. There was no way. Xia Yuqin was just too much in line with my aesthetic taste. I really couldn't bear to part with him, but it seemed that I had no choice but to part with him this time. Xia Yuqin took almost all of my pocket money for this month. I could no longer afford to keep this canary. The next morning, while he was still sound asleep, I sent him a message to terminate our relationship, blocked him, and then went back to school. Sorry, Senior Xia, after thinking about it all night, I've decided to terminate our relationship. I wish you to find a more generous sugar mommy. Suddenly becoming single again, coupled with the bankruptcy crisis, my depression seemed to have increased exponentially. During a boring class, I had already sighed 5 times. Tao Tao, why are you unhappy? Su Che, who was sitting next to me, asked me in a low voice. There was no need to hide the bankruptcy from my childhood sweetheart who had grown up with me. I lay on the table and told him my thoughts. I think I definitely need to find a part-time job to earn my living expenses, Su Che pondered for a moment and then said, actually, I haven't heard my parents say that Uncle Tao's company is in crisis, but since you want to earn money, would you like to apply to be my piano teacher? I shook my head with a good sense of self-awareness. I've only won a few awards that don't have much value. I don't have much skill, but it's more than enough to teach me. Tao Tao, 6 classes a month, 50,000 yuan, is that okay? I was swayed. Su Che gently persuaded me. Don't think too much. I just didn't like my previous piano teacher. I immediately became his hard worker. Boss, I will definitely teach you seriously. After class, Su Che and I left the teaching building together. I was still making an appointment with him for the teaching time of the first class. Then I saw Xia Yuqin standing at the entrance of the teaching building. He was looking at me, and there was an indescribable chill in his gaze. I found an excuse to persuade Su Che to leave. Then I walked up to Xia Yuqin worriedly. Are you looking for me? I was a bit worried that he had come to ask me for a breakup fee. Xia Yuqin looked at me coldly. After a moment, he finally spoke. What do you mean? Did you dump me because male models are cheaper? Under Xia Yuqin's oppressive questioning, I had to tell him the truth about the bankruptcy. Now, I can no longer afford to keep you. Xia Yuqin was stunned. Just because of this. Has nothing to do with male models. There was a big question mark on my head. Why do you keep bringing up male models? He smiled faintly, neither a smile nor a laugh. Didn't you mention it yesterday? I recalled it for a moment and then realized that he had misunderstood. I felt that my aesthetic taste had been insulted. How could I possibly dump him for a male model whose face I couldn't even remember? I was so angry that my voice involuntarily rose. I have no intention of keeping anyone else. I only mentioned male models to emphasize that Xia Yuqin was expensive. Hearing this, he let out a self-deprecating chuckle. His tense shoulders finally relaxed. When I saw Xia Yuqin raise his hand as if to hold me, I dodged it immediately. I kindly reminded him, Xia Yuqin, we've terminated our relationship. He casually let out an "oh" and said, I know, then let's be in a relationship. He didn't understand the key point at all. I really don't have any money to spend on you. I stood on tiptoe and leaned close to his ear, emphasizing it to him. He took the opportunity to put his arm around my waist, lifted me up 2 steps, so that I could look him in the eye. I have money to spend on you. After casually dealing with me, he took out his phone and opened the Moments app to edit a public post. Actually, I could understand his current mood. He felt a sense of crisis after suddenly losing his sugar mommy, so he was willing to please me a bit. Essentially, he still didn't believe that I was really poor. I stopped his hand that was typing and sincerely advised him, I'm not lying to you, Xia Yuqin, I'm really poor now. No matter what you do, even if you say you like me and that you're with me not for the money, I can't give you even a single yuan. The corners of Xia Yuqin's lips curled into a cold smile. What the hell are you talking about? Since he was too embarrassed to admit it, I no longer insisted on exposing him. I just comforted him casually, saying, with your looks, you're very popular. I'll also recommend you to other wealthy young ladies. If someone chooses you, I'll give her your phone number. Then, before he could react, I slipped away from beside him. Bye-bye. I ran very fast, and the 2 ballerina buns under my ears were left flapping behind me. In the afternoon of that day, after class, Su Che and I went to the school's piano room for the first teaching session. Unfortunately, we ran into Xia Yuqin again. Su Che blocked me behind him and his gaze landed lightly on the boy opposite. Tao Tao, is he harassing you? Xia Yuqin smiled and said, this has nothing to do with you. Su Che faced him directly and said, what concerns Tao Tao concerns me. If you have something to say, you can tell me, and I'll deal with it on her behalf. Xia Yuqin leaned against the wall obliquely and sized him up with great interest. She had a free ride with me and doesn't plan to take responsibility. Are you going to take her place and let me have a free ride in return? You. Su Che's face turned livid with anger. I came out from behind him and was about to pull Xia Yuqin away when I saw a girl running over from not far away. Senior Xia, so you're here. Didn't we agree to have dinner together tonight? I was stunned for a second, then I grabbed Su Che and ran all the way to the piano room without looking back. Vaguely, I heard Xia Yuqin calling my name from behind. I couldn't hide my relationship with Xia Yuqin from Su Che anymore. His fingertips stroked the piano, and he said casually, I've seen a lot of these Phoenix men. He's pestering you now just because he wants to squeeze out your last bit of value. I rested my chin in my hand and stared out the window, lost in thought. Without saying a word, Su Che said casually, Tao Tao, didn't you want to introduce rich and beautiful girls to him? I have a friend who likes his type. How about I introduce them to each other? I thought of the girl just now and said softly, maybe it's not necessary. Su Che noticed my low spirits and said angrily, Tao Tao, is someone so mercenary really worthy of your affection? I turned around to look at Su Che and said, actually, I fell in love with him a long time ago. I fell in love with Xia Yuqin at first sight, but I never found an opportunity to get close to him until one night. I saw him surrounded by a group of burly men in suits near the school. I took a deep breath, pulled up my suspender skirt, and rushed over to stand in front of Xia Yuqin. I've already called the police. Do you still want to start a fight? The group of people looked at me with a rather indescribable gaze, but they were eventually scared away. I turned around and comforted him gently. Senior Xia, they've left. You don't have to be afraid anymore. He slightly raised his eyebrows, and I didn't know what he was smiling about. Then should I thank you? I shook my head generously and said, you're welcome. Why did they surround you? Do you need me to accompany you to the police station? Xia Yuqin didn't show the slightest sign of being frightened. He walked beside me in a carefree manner and said, I owed them money. I'll pay it back for you. I didn't hesitate to take up the offer. Xia Yuqin stopped and sized me up for a long while. What do you mean? Are you going to keep me? What an intimate relationship. The heat rose to the tips of my ears, and my hands nervously clutched the hem of my skirt. Yes, I'm quite rich. Xia Yuqin casually raised the corners of his lips, which was extremely charming. Sorry, junior student. I don't sell my body. I was rejected in a roundabout way, but... Before we parted, I quietly stuffed a bank card without a password and with a limit of 50,000 yuan into his coat pocket. At that time, I just hoped that he could pay off the debt as soon as possible and avoid getting beaten again. The next time I saw him was 3 days later. Xia Yuqin sneered. Do you know how much effort I put into finding you? Oh, I forgot to tell him my major and name that day. I thought he was coming to return the money, but Xia Yuqin said that the situation of me secretly giving him money counted as forcibly keeping him, and he had to fulfill his obligations. From that day on. When he didn't have classes, he would go to my small apartment off campus to cook for me. On weekends, he would also accompany me to go shopping. Sometimes when he wanted to find me at school, I would seriously refuse. It was better not to let others know about this unseemly relationship, or else Xia Yuqin's reputation would be ruined. Our first kiss was on the night of my 19th birthday. All the lights in the apartment were turned off. I was kneeling in front of the coffee table, waiting for Xia Yuqin to light the candles with a lighter. He knelt down beside me, struck the lighter but didn't hurry to light the candles. Taoli, he tapped on the table with his knuckles and said in a flat tone, "Do you want to have a kiss?" I instinctively looked up at him. There was not a single glimmer of light in Xia Yuqin's silent eyes. Like an undercurrent lurking beneath the calm sea surface, I was left feeling at a loss and stammered, "Okay." Xia Yuqin closed the lighter cover and extinguished the flame with a bang. He leaned over, and our 4 lips rubbed against each other. My first kiss was a bit inexperienced. Xia Yuqin and I kissed on and off for a long time, but at most, it was just a gentle suck on the lips. In the beginning, Xia Yuqin didn't take my money. When I asked, he just said that he hadn't spent all the money in that card yet. But once, after he heard that Song Yun was keeping 4 male models at the same time, he mercilessly raised the price. Before that, I occasionally had the illusion that I was in a relationship with him. After the price increase, he would urge me to give him money every month. I finally became convinced that he only liked my money. In the evening, Su Che and I parted outside the piano room. I walked towards the school gate, planning to go out and have a bowl of small wontons. The conversation between 2 girls not far away caught my attention. "Do you think the person at the door of the KTV just now won't be beaten to death?" "Right, who knows? It serves him right for not paying back the money. I heard he's the heartthrob of a junior year department. This isn't the first time he's owed debt." I stopped in my tracks. The 2 girls were chatting intently and didn't notice me. "You don't know, do you, that boy is said to have a sugar mommy. Now that he's been beaten beyond recognition, his sugar mommy will surely dump him." The most famous heartthrob in the junior year was Xia Yuqin. Before I knew it, I was already rushing towards the KTV. There were a lot of onlookers at the door, but none of them dared to step forward. A group of thugs formed a circle, and I couldn't see the person inside at all. "Stop hitting him," I called out to them unsteadily. "I've already called the police." "Go ahead and call." The leader sneered. "If he doesn't pay back the money, I'll kill him sooner or later. I'll pay it back for him." It didn't matter. I could still sell a few of my bags. "Who is he to you?" "He's my boyfriend," I said word by word. "Xia Yuqin is my boyfriend." I didn't understand why I blurted out boyfriend instead of friend or classmate. Maybe it was because in countless moments when I was with Xia Yuqin, I felt like we were in a relationship. The man's shiny bald head reflected a question mark. Who the hell is Xia Yuqin? I was even more stunned than him. She got the wrong person. Xia Yuqin, who was safe and sound, emerged from somewhere. I stood there with a blank expression. Just then, the police car also arrived, and Xia Yuqin directly pulled me back to the small apartment. As soon as we entered the door, he picked me up and placed me on the cabinet in the entrance hall. He propped his hands on both sides of me and slowly settled the score with me. "You're quite interesting, boyfriend." Xia Yuqin didn't forget to sneer. "You left your boyfriend behind and stayed in the piano room with another guy for 3 hours. Is this how you treat your boyfriend?" I pushed his arm, trying to jump down. "I just said it casually. If you're okay, you can leave. Don't come here anymore. I'm going to change the door password." The boy pressed me back again. My back was tightly against the wall, and he leaned down on me. His lips lingered beside my face, and he said in a low voice, "Do you want to deny our relationship?" After saying that, he gently bit the tip of my nose. My emotions had reached the breaking point, and tears fell uncontrollably. Xia Yuqin was stunned. I let myself cry out loud and pounded his shoulders randomly. "Don't touch me. When I liked you and asked if you wanted to be in a relationship, you refused me every time and took all my money. Now that I have no money and don't want to like you anymore, you're pestering me again. You clearly don't like me. What are you doing now? Xie Yuqin pressed his lips tightly and didn't move. After a while, I was too tired from crying to hit him anymore. Xie Yuqin lifted my 2 legs and wrapped them around his waist, in a position like a koala hugging a tree branch. I was carried to the sofa and sat down. Xie Yuqin gently kissed the corner of my eye and then pulled back. He looked at me with a gaze as if I were a child throwing a tantrum. He smiled helplessly and said, "I've been in a relationship with my girlfriend for half a year, and she treats me like a gigolo. Do you really think I can kiss a girl I don't like?" I had my reasons and said, "It's because I give you money." After thinking for a moment, I added rigorously, "A lot of money." Xie Yuqin laughed out loud. He didn't refute immediately but slowly opened the online banking app and showed me the balance of a card. I was stunned and asked in disbelief, "What's this? Is this all the money you've received from me?" "Yes," Xie Yuqin drawled lazily and said half jokingly, "I didn't dare to spend it. In case one day you fall for another man, dump me, and even ask for the money back." I wrinkled my nose. Why was Xie Yuqin always so jealous? Xie Yuqin confessed everything to me. For example, he wasn't having dinner alone with that girl this afternoon but having a dinner party with several club presidents. Another example was that on the day I saved him like a hero, he wasn't being chased for debt by thugs at all. Instead, the bodyguards sent by his extremely wealthy grandfather were trying to catch him back to receive the family punishment. And another example, he always suspected that I would be like Song Yun and keep several people at the same time, so he raised the price crazily. I was furious. "Why do you always suspect that I'm fickle? I've only liked you from beginning to end, otherwise." Xie Yuqin's gaze fixed on me gradually darkened. Before I could finish speaking, he kissed me heavily. Without giving me time to relax, he pried open my mouth, and our lips and tongues intertwined. His hands were no longer just stroking my waist, it was a completely unfamiliar experience that could numb my nerves. The whole process was like riding a roller coaster. The carriages were about to stop just as they were climbing to the highest point. Stuck in midair, the player was desperately in need of the administrator to manually push the control lever, but the administrator instead released his hand maliciously. Xie Yuqin casually accused me, "You've soiled the sofa." I was so anxious that I didn't know what to do. I reached out and hugged his neck, begging, "Xie Yuqin, don't bully me anymore." He rubbed the corner of my eye with his fingertips and sneered softly, "Why are you crying? You clearly like it." Only after I was half coerced and half persuaded to admit that I liked him did he pick me up and carry me to the bedroom. Xie Yuqin's dark eyes locked me tightly under his gaze. The emotions in his eyes were as intense as a storm about to break out, but he still looked calm on the surface. Later, he even blamed me in a hoarse voice for soiling the bed sheets, the desk, and the bay window. On the balcony the next morning, I woke up earlier than Xie Yuqin. I fished out my phone from under the pillow and half opened my eyes to look at the unread messages, which were twice as many as usual. The incident at the KTV door yesterday had spread. Even classmates I wasn't very familiar with came to ask me if Xie Yuqin was my boyfriend. When I was replying to the third person, the arm around my waist tightened. I turned around and met Xie Yuqin's eyes with a faint smile. "What do you mean?" His gaze passed over my phone screen. "What do you mean Xie Yuqin isn't my boyfriend?" I blinked and said, "Well, he isn't." Xie Yuqin stared at me in disbelief for 2 seconds, then propped himself up on his arm and looked down at me. The thin quilt slipped down to his waist. "Then what was last night between us? A one-night stand?" Xie Yuqin's expression told me that he was almost going crazy with anger. I ignored him and said, "Something like that." After saying that, I turned over and continued playing with my phone. Xie Yuqin turned me over again and asked in a low voice, "Why?" "Because I haven't forgiven you yet." I was glad I wasn't a balloon, or I would have exploded long ago. Xie Yuqin actually pretended to be poor and deceived me for half a year. I couldn't forgive him so easily. Absolutely not. It was absolutely impossible. After I had enough rest, I got up, picked up the clothes on the carpet, put them on, and went back to school. Xie Yuqin half reclined on the bedside, and his sinister gaze was like that of someone looking at a heartless woman who had abandoned him after sleeping with him. In the afternoon of that day, the club members went on a team-building activity to an escape room. There were 8 people for each theme. I didn't know if it was a coincidence, but Xie Yuqin and I were assigned to the last group, and the horror index of this theme was higher than that of the previous ones. I was used to playing these and wasn't afraid, but it seemed that Xie Yuqin wasn't the same. Before entering the escape room, he gently tugged at my sleeve and said slowly, bargaining, junior student, I'm afraid of this kind of thing, I'll stick close to you later, can you protect me? I looked up and slowly sized up the 186-meter tall boy in front of me with broad shoulders and a narrow waist. I fell into a moment of thought. The vice president beside us clicked his tongue and said, Xiaoyuqin, are you a coward, is that a problem? Xiaoyuqin didn't even bother to lift his eyes. Fine, then Tao Li, if you're not afraid, you can keep an eye on your senior Xia, we have to take care of 4 people who are afraid of ghosts over here. I had to agree. I reluctantly told him, well, if you're afraid later, just close your eyes and hold on to my sleeve, I'll lead you. Xiaoyuqin didn't care about losing face and openly grabbed my sleeve now. He casually raised his eyebrows and said, thank you, junior student, so annoying. In the first 2 rooms of the escape room, there were no NPCs. Xiaoyuqin just held on to my sleeve and didn't react much to the dark room. He could even provide clues when we were at a loss in solving the puzzles. As soon as the door of the 3rd room was opened, an NPC suddenly popped up in front of us. The first 6 people were so scared that they fled in all directions. Screams echoed through the corridor. Xiaoyuqin was a bit slow-witted and slow to react. It took him 2 seconds to be scared, and in an instant, he pulled me into his arms. He bent over and buried his head in the crook of my neck. I patted his arm and said in a stiff tone, hey, the NPC has gone to scare the other people, you can get up now. Xiaoyuqin didn't believe me and held me even tighter. Even his shoulders were trembling slightly, so he was really scared. I thought he was just pretending. When I spoke again, my voice involuntarily softened. It's okay. Don't be afraid, Xiaoyuqin. I raised my hand and gently stroked his back. I'm not lying to you. I've driven the ghost away. I said I would protect you. Xiaoyuqin paused, and his shoulders trembled even more. I didn't know why, but the more I comforted him, the more scared he seemed to get. Just as I was at a loss, he came to his senses and released me. Xiaoyuqin lowered his eyes to hide his emotions, and his brows furrowed slightly. Forget it, Tao Li, when I'm scared, I'll hug you, and that will delay you from finding clues. I'd better go with the others, I don't want to hold you back. Xiaoyuqin rarely had such a solemn expression. He took a step into the dark corridor but then retreated with a shudder. I grabbed his hand, unable to hold back my soft heart. What do you mean by holding me back? All 6 of them are scared. What if they all run away and leave you behind? I felt a bit awkward, and my voice also dropped. It's okay if you hug me when you're scared. I held his hand and walked while saying dryly, Xiaoyuqin, you're so strange, you didn't hug me less before. Why are you being so polite all of a sudden? Xiaoyuqin lazily followed behind me. Because I don't have that status anymore. Didn't you say you didn't want me? I forgot about that. I almost thought things were still the same as before. I pressed my lips together and stopped talking, focusing on finding clues to open the door. Finally, we escaped from the escape room, and I let out a long sigh of relief. Hey, what's going on with you two? The vice president pointed at the hands that Xiaoyuqin and I were still holding and smiled meaningfully. Didn't you say you're not a couple? You're still pretending to us. I instinctively let go of Xiaoyuqin's hand. My mind was racing, trying to come up with a convincing reason. Xiaoyuqin had already slowly opened his mouth. We're indeed not a couple, he said calmly. I'm pursuing her. Since then, Xiaoyuqin no longer avoided anything. He became more and more thick-skinned and would stick to me even during classes, meetings, and club activities. It was really annoying. One rare night, he went to a friend's birthday party and didn't pester me, but soon, I received a video from a friend. The lighting in the private room was dim, but I still saw Xiaoyuqin at a glance. He was holding an ashtray in his hand and smashing it on another boy's head. His actions were resolute, without the slightest scruple. There were a bunch of people around trying to stop the fight, and it was in a complete mess. Tao. My boyfriend was also at the scene. He said that Senior Xia started the fight because someone spoke ill of you. The boy who was beaten was drunk and mentioned me. He said that Xiaoyuqin had been pursuing me for so long, but I was still playing hard to get and refusing. I was just pretending to be high and mighty on purpose. The boy burped drunkenly. Damn it. For a girl like this, one good beating will make her behave. Almost the next second, the ashtray was thrown at his head. Xiaoyuqin kicked aside the coffee table and pinned the boy to the ground and started hitting him. Each punch was harder than the last, and he was really going all out. I was afraid that things would get out of hand, so I wanted to call Xiaoyuqin. Fortunately, my friend said that the beaten boy had already been taken to a clinic for bandaging and that it wasn't a big deal. I curled up in my small reclining chair and watched the blurry video over and over again. When I didn't know how many times I had watched it, an incoming call popped up on the top of the screen. It was Xiaoyuqin. Not asleep yet? Yeah, I replied. Absent-mindedly, I'm downstairs of your dormitory, I brought you a cake. I specifically changed into a fluffy Sherry May thick pajamas and looked at myself in the mirror before going downstairs. The boy was standing beside the street lamp, wearing only a thin coat over his grayish-white hoodie. He had a sense of quiet and clear loneliness. It was hard to associate him with the fierce person in the video. I took the bag from his hand. Inside was a box of cherry cake. I just glanced at it and asked him, in a low voice, "Did you have a good time tonight?" Xiaoyuqin's expression didn't change. It was okay. He was even as carefree as ever. Almost everyone except me brought their significant other. I was bored being alone, so I left early. My gaze landed on his right hand that was in his pocket. "Xiaoyuqin, why don't you take your right hand out?" The boy's gaze paused, realizing what I meant. He simply stretched out his right hand boldly. Some of the wounds on his knuckles were even still oozing blood. Xiaoyuqin didn't seem to care at all. That guy had a foul mouth when he was drunk. I just helped him sober up a bit. I held his hand and stared at the wound without saying a word. Xiaoyuqin wasn't a weakling. I was the soft-hearted one, because I was already so soft-hearted that I wanted to forgive him. Xiaoyuqin seemed to know what I was thinking. He smiled and said, "It's just a minor injury, baby. Since you're still angry, I'll keep pursuing you for a while longer. It's only natural for me to beat him up. Don't take it to heart." I should have warned him that he wasn't qualified to call me that now, but I didn't want to argue with him today for the sake of the cherry cake. Although Xiaoyuqin had returned all the money I had given him when I was keeping him, I was still on the verge of bankruptcy after all. Besides being Suche's piano teacher, I found another part-time job. I was making cakes at a dessert shop on the main commercial street outside the school. Compared to the piano that my mother forced me to learn, making cakes was what I was best at and my favorite hobby. The business of the dessert shop was average, so most of the time, I was alone in the store. The boss only came to the store in the first few days and then never showed up again. I called my dad, who was on a business trip in Finland, maybe the last business deal, and said, "Dad, I'm working at a dessert shop now." "What? Did you open a dessert shop?" I was speechless just as I was about to tell him that I could already earn money to support myself. He interrupted me and hung up the phone in a hurry. "Ancestor, your expenses are so high that I really can't scold you. Okay, go and have fun on your own. Your dad is busy with a meeting." I was really wronged. At this time, Suche sent me 2 more messages. "Tao Tao, I'll bring a friend over later. Please prepare 2 hot drinks and desserts for us." The shop was finally going to have customers today. My fighting spirit was reignited, and I put on my Peter Rabbit apron and started working hard. When Suche and the other person arrived, I had just placed 2 raspberry cheesecakes on the table. There was a girl behind Suche whom I had never seen before. "Who is this?" The girl looked at me. Suche smiled naturally and said, "My girlfriend." I turned my head mechanically. I looked at Suche as if he were a dead person. When he walked up to me, I realized that his smile had frozen. My mom insisted on matching me with her. "Tao Tao, please help me. It will only take half an hour at most. I'll triple your salary next month." The temptation of money was really too great. I nodded very reluctantly. Although I hadn't gotten back together with Xiaoyuqin yet, I still felt something was strange. I felt an indescribable sense of guilt, and this faint sense of guilt expanded countless times when Xiaoyuqin suddenly appeared in the store. I seemed to still be sitting next to Suche, but in fact, I had been feeling uneasy for a while. Xiaoyuqin's gaze passed over the 3 of us indifferently. He walked closer, raised the back of his hand, and rubbed my side face as if no one else was there. "You got flour on your face." The girl frowned in confusion. "Who is this?" Without thinking, I blurted out, "My brother." Xiaoyuqin raised his eyes and looked at me quietly. The girl nodded in understanding. "A brother is more attentive than a boyfriend." "Suche, didn't you notice that your girlfriend had flour on her face?" "Oh no. Girlfriend, huh?" Xiaoyuqin smiled faintly, and his eyes seemed to be saying, "You're really something, Taoli." Fortunately, he didn't expose us on the spot. After Suche and the girl left, I immediately explained the whole story clearly. I said firmly, "I've never liked Suche." Surprisingly, Xiaoyuqin didn't seem to care. He casually raised his eyebrows to indicate that he understood. Going back to the apartment after work, he asked me politely, "I want to try the cake you made with your own hands. Is that okay?" I suppressed the little bit of disappointment and nodded, "Sure." Since there were some ingredients and utensils missing in the apartment, after reporting to the boss via WeChat, I packed some things from the store and took them home. This boss was really nice and easygoing, almost always saying yes to my requests. When I was folding the apron and planning to put it in my bag, Xiaoyuqin came over and said, "You don't need to take this." He looked at me and said, "I bought one for you." I let out an "oh" and put the apron back in place. I had Noticed half a year ago that Xiaoyuqin was very considerate in many things, but this time I was overthinking it. I looked at the apron on me in the mirror and pursed my lips. Not very satisfied, I started to explain to Xiaoyuqin, "Don't buy this kind of lace apron next time, it's flashy but not practical and can easily get snagged and broken." After I finished speaking, I saw him staring at me without saying a word. I poked his side face unhappily. "Remember?" He nodded indifferently, brushed the stray hair by my ear with his hand, and murmured in a low voice, "I also bought a hair scarf. Do you want to wear it?" It was a triangular hair scarf of the same lace style. I tried it on. I liked it so much that I didn't want to take it off. However, were these sold in the supermarket? I didn't dwell on it anymore and went into the kitchen to start preparing. Xiaoyuqin came out of the shower while I was kneading the dough. He hugged me from behind. "You look cute," he commented on my apron and hair scarf. I struggled a bit. "Xiaoyuqin, don't disturb me. I'm not Xiaoyuqin." He pressed his chin against the crook of my neck, and his low, hoarse voice sounded a bit cold at the moment. "Baby, I'm your brother." The sword hanging over my head finally dropped. The matter of pretending to be Suche's girlfriend wasn't going to be easily overlooked by him, Xiaoyuqin, like this. The invisible aggression around him scared me so much that I didn't dare to move. Xiaoyuqin seemed to be completely unaware of my sudden stiffness. "What are you doing?" "Kneading the dough." I could only answer obediently. "The steps to make a cake." "Yeah." He rubbed his nose against my ear. "Teach me." Xiaoyuqin wasn't really serious about learning how to make a cake. Even so, he could still calmly refute my opinions at every stage. "Is this not how you knead the dough? Let's forget about the cream, it's not very clean. This works on the same principle as a mixer." I couldn't help it and wanted to reach out and cover the mouth of the person behind me. "Xiaoyuqin, can you please stop talking? I'm your brother." He corrected me. If I didn't call him brother, Xiaoyuqin wouldn't give me any chance to negotiate. I had to give in. "Brother, I'll never pretend to be someone else's girlfriend again." "What else?" At this moment, I didn't have much ability to think. "What else? Do you want to be in a relationship with me?" I nodded eagerly. "Yes." Xiaoyuqin was satisfied and stopped saying things that made me feel embarrassed. It was only then that I realized he actually had many hidden hobbies. For example, there were some unspeakable clothes hanging in the innermost part of the closet. I woke up at 11:30 the next day. I was the only one in the bedroom. I woke up instantly and took out my phone, planning to call the boss and apologize, but at 6 o'clock in the morning, the boss had already sent me a message informing me that the dessert shop would be closed for 2 days. I let out a sigh of relief and stuffed myself back into the quilt to stay in bed. When I scrolled up the chat window, I saw an unread message from my dad at 10 o'clock last night. He had already returned from Finland. I got up, washed up, called Xiaoyuqin, who was having a class at school, and then went straight home. I couldn't wait to share my experience of working hard to earn money with my dad. He put his fingers on the bridge of his nose and fell into thought. After a while, he asked me cautiously, "Is it because I haven't transferred your pocket money this month that you thought our family was going to go bankrupt?" I looked at him in disbelief. I jumped up from the sofa with a whoosh. "You said it yourself." I was so excited that my bangs were fluttering as I recreated the scene for him that day. Just like usual, I put my hands together and asked him for my living expenses. "Thank you, Dad. I love you the most. Please give me an extra 50,000 yuan this month." I had no choice. Xiaoyuqin always took 80% of my money, and I didn't even have enough money to buy a bag. He reluctantly transferred the money to me. He was still muttering very softly, "Lily, there's a high probability that our family is going to go bankrupt." Although I didn't hear the middle part clearly, but it should have been something about the company having problems. Now that I thought about it, I realized something was wrong. The middle-aged father was so angry that his temples were throbbing. "Didn't you listen carefully when I was talking to you? I meant that if your pocket money keeps increasing by 50,000 yuan every month, there's a high probability that our family will go bankrupt." I had never felt so complicated anyway. The surprise brought by the news that the bankruptcy crisis was fake overwhelmed all other feelings. I kissed my dad on his shiny bald forehead and then rushed back to school to find Xiaoyuqin. He was having a meeting in the club office. The vice president was discussing the event venue with him. "Okay, I understand. It's almost time for lunch. Let's go out and eat something." Xiaoyuqin's posture leaning back in the swivel chair was not very proper, and what he said was even more annoying. "Yes, Tally is my girlfriend." The vice president, who asked, "I'm asking if you're going out to eat." There was a hint of superiority in Xiaoyuqin's tone. "Of course, I'm waiting for my girlfriend to eat with me." Get lost, get lost." The vice president couldn't stand it anymore. I also felt quite embarrassed when I heard this outside the door. Throughout the whole day, Xiaoyuqin was like a peacock spreading its feathers. He almost announced our relationship to every one of his friends, especially when facing Suche. Xiaoyuqin gently threatened me 3 times not to speak. He pulled me behind him and lazily curled his lips. He said to Suche, "My girlfriend asked me to tell you that she's not bankrupt. You'd better find someone else as your piano teacher, junior student." Suche had a blank expression and his gaze passed over Xiaoyuqin too. "Look at me, Tao Tao, what on earth is going on?" Xiaoyuqin blocked his line of sight again and smiled condescendingly as he informed, "Her matters are my matters, junior student. Isn't it okay for you to talk to me directly if you have any problems?" Suche stared at him expressionlessly for 2 seconds and then sneered, "Fine, then I'll tell you directly, it's nothing much. I just want to persuade Tao Tao to think it through. After all, being in a relationship is different from a sugar baby relationship. You can have several men when you're keeping someone, but you can only have one when you're in a relationship. By the way, Tao Tao, did you see Song Yan's Moments post yesterday? A new batch of male models came to the club, and they're even better looking than senior Xia." When Suche left with a sneer, Xiaoyuqin's face was so gloomy that it seemed as if water could drip from it, especially when he caught me clicking on Song Yan's Moments out of curiosity that night. "It's not Xiaoyuqin, I can explain." I futilely shrank into the quilt. He turned around and opened the innermost cabinet. "Do you want to choose or should I?" There were some accessories that matched the dresses, and I had no idea where they should be worn. To avoid Xiaoyuqin going crazy, I hugged the quilt shivering and sat up to pick the dress with the most fabric. "Xiaoyuqin, look how obedient I am. Can we go to bed before 2 o'clock tonight?" His Adam's apple rolled, and he replied in a hoarse voice, "I'll try my best." I was mentally prepared for the worst-case scenario like the previous 2 times, where we wouldn't go to bed until 3 o'clock, but it was obvious that I hadn't prepared enough. It turned out that the clothes were meant to be torn. The sound of the fabric being torn completely brought out the dark side of Xiaoyuqin's heart. I vaguely remember that I seemed to see the sunrise that day. The end.